Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mic'd up. Council. Good morning. Thank you for coming. It is 9 o'clock on October 16th, 2019. Commissioner Boyce.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sad to report, line of duty deaths, officers down is up 5 from 94 to 99. Firefighter deaths up 4 from 38 to 42. Military deaths, happy to report, Mr. Chair, remain for 2019 at 31. A moment of silence, please. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
I just have some for us to consider, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, Sue.
Oh, either one, doesn't matter.
Okay, we had put some jobs out to LGPI, which is the company that establishes salary wages for us, and we didn't hear back from them. It was 2 months, so we proceeded with posting them to our agenda, assigning what I viewed was similar wages to those job descriptions. We found out this morning that they're actually going to be looking at those job descriptions, so we can either proceed as we have here or pull them off and wait for the report from LGPI. LGPI has looked at all of the other wage descriptions, so we might be better off just pulling them off.
Okay.
So it would be for the under 7H, 7I, and then on the back,
So you're just going to pull those?
that'd be my recommendation.
Okay.
And then it would be 12B. And then the other change would be, that I would recommend, is that the finance director go under 6 for quarterly reports, that she be moved up to B because she has to get to an audit that's in the blue room. So she would go before the assessor.
I'm good with all that, Mr. Chair. So noted.
I'm fine with that.
All right.
And then I have one other amendment to the agenda. I'd like to move item 7D out for discussion.
Fine here, Mr. Chair.
7D out for discussion.
Was that B as in boy?
D as in dog.
Excuse me. Still okay.
All right.
So you want to put that under 8 what? 8D?
Yes, under AD, yes.
Okay.
All right, any other amendments to the agenda? Do I have a motion, please?
So move, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, next we're going to have some public comments. Jeremy Dumeyer. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning. So for the record, Jeremy Dumeyer, Curry County Emergency Manager. Just want to take a moment to give public thanks. We had the Emergency Preparedness Expo this weekend on Saturday. It was a well-attended expo. We had 22 different preparedness booths, multiple vehicles outside, including the CalOR Mass Casualty Unit and helicopter. We had 6 different public speakers at this event. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone that participated in this event, our vendors, and the sponsors, Fred Meyers and Brookings, O'Reilly and Brookings, Golders Napa for donating the door prizes. Nectar of Life as well donated a door prize to the event. We had approximately 250 people show up to this 6-hour event, which is far in excess of what we had last year. and I am hoping to do this again next year and have it even larger. I also had a presentation last night at the Southwest Oregon Community College campus. About 10 people or so showed up for that event. Hour-long presentation, lasted 2 hours with good feedback, good input. So it was a good event to be at there. And then just a quick reminder, tomorrow is the Great American Shakeout. We have at 10:17 a.m. on the 17th of October, where we drop, cover, and hold for 60 seconds and then evacuate to our designated locations. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Boyce.
All 6 speakers, I got to spend the entire day there. I thought it was very well organized. 250 people doesn't sound like a lot, but that first 2 or 3 hours, it was mighty crowded in there. And the vendors were all very congenial and helpful. And the 6 speakers, even the NOAA representative was pretty good. But all of them. And I just want to say to Emergency Management Coordinator Dumeier, terrific job. And thank you. And I had your little brochure I was going to hold up, but I left it on my desk. But there's the go bag. Reminder to the citizens, be prepared.
Yes, and we handed out not quite 100 of those. I promised 75, but I handed out closer to 100 of those go bags at the event, and that turned out to be a really good promotion.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Gene Clausen. Morning, sir.
Morning. The subject I want to talk about this morning, once again, is economic development, in this case, specifically about tourism. Logic tells us that the more money a person has, the more money they're likely to spend when they're on vacation. Right at the top of that money list are people who own their own airplanes. Now, private pilots like to fly when and where they want. As of right now, if they land at any airport between Crescent City and North Bend, their takeoff times and landing times are subject to weather and time of day restrictions. That can put a real crimp in someone's vacation plans. If they can't make it to Gold Beach before dark or have clear weather, they have to land at Crescent City or North Bend, rent a car, drive to Gold Beach, hoping that their room reservations are still in effect and that their fishing guide will be waiting for them. But if Gold Beach had IFR, and I will explain that in a second, they can fly anytime they want. IFR means Instrument Flight Rules. Pilots are trained in first visual flight rules, which is you have to be able to see where you're going, but what fun's that? Let's try flying with blindfold on. That's IFR. Let me see here. Okay, at the moment, there is no IFR-equipped airports between Crescent City and North Bend. However, Gold Beach, first of all, lengthened its runway by 400 feet some years ago to put us over the 3,000-foot minimum for IFR dedication. Andy Wright, our manager of the port, started an IFR application for Gold Beach Airport 2 years ago. As of last week, he is saying we are going to be ready for IFR this next spring. What we need to do in that case, just like last week when I talked about putting ads in birding magazines for the birders, we should be using some of that transient lodging tax money to advertise in flying magazines, letting folks know that they can fly here when they want, okay, no matter what the weather, except extreme winds, or any time of day. So vacation ads in flying magazines, like any other magazine, you've got to get started in front. If we want something in an issue of May of next year, we should start working on designing the ads and buying the space in the magazines pretty much now. Anyway, That's all I've got. Fly on.
Well, I'd like to tell you, as a pilot, I have a couple thousand hours, and I am an instrument-rated pilot as well. Having flown into Gold Beach many times in instrument conditions, wanting to fly into Gold Beach under instrument conditions, you can't. Because of the way the hillside is built out here, you cannot do an ILS approach into Gold Beach. What Mr. McNair at our last meeting with the county summit spoke about, and I haven't spoken to Mr. Wright about this, but it's good information for the public, is they are looking to put a GPS approach into there, which is the minimums that you can go down to when you have a cloud cover are higher at a GPS approach than they're much higher at a GPS approach than they are at an ILS approach. So we will be allowed to put a GPS approach in, but we will not be able to put a full instrument ILS approach in. But Commissioner Boyce is looking and talking about the airport up north, as am I, to put an ILS approach into that airport and coordinating that with emergency services so that we can do a lot of work up in the airport up north of here. I do want to say, though, that I commend Gold Beach Airport for moving forward with some of this. And what you spoke about with fly-ins, they're called fly-ins is what they are. And basically, if you announce that to flying clubs, that we have a GPS approach here, you can maybe set up a big fly-in weekend where we do some things here locally in the county, and you may have 100 or 200 planes fly in for those because they're a bunch of retired folks that have nothing to do on a Saturday in the middle of June when they know they're going to have pretty good weather, and it can make a big deal for the county. So I thank you for the information on that.
One thing I would like to make clear, in the discussions I've had with Andy, he's been speaking about IFR and about the approaches and what work is going to be needed to be done to clear the path for full IFR landings. Now, if there's some confusion here, I'll get back to him and we'll see what we can straighten out.
An ILS approach and a GPS approach are two completely different animals.
Correct.
So a GPS approach, because of the mountainside there that's right on the ocean, the height of that, it will not be allowed for an ILS approach. I actually asked the FAA about that about 10 years ago. And there's minimums for, this way that you have to have as well as vertical.
Correct.
So, but a GPS approach, yes, they would be available for.
Okay.
I do have a question, Mr. Clausen. As you know, the people that are paying into the transit lodging tax are the hoteliers, bed and breakfast that are outside of the cities. They're in the
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay, the people that pay into the tourism lodging tax, the transient lodging tax, those are the people those are the businesses that are outside of the cities. So, the promotions committee has not started meeting yet, but I'm thinking they would probably focus on promoting areas outside of the cities first, since those are what they're paying into. But in the city of Gold Beach, they actually those hoteliers do pay into a tax.
Correct.
And I'm wondering if you've presented this idea to the city of Gold Beach.
I would imagine both to be presented, but thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good work, Mr. Potts. And you mentioned mountains?
Yes.
So if Kiss and Rock doesn't give you enough time to properly line up, you must be going too fast.
Well, it's what it is, the vertical minimums that you have to fly down to at a certain point. They give you points, and you have to be at a speed and an altitude when you get to those points, or they'll violate you, and you don't want to be violated.
No.
David Barnes? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, all. I know it's probably going to come up later, but I wanted to speak to you. I went to the AOC meeting, which you all attended a couple of weeks ago, and it's the first time I'd ever been there. Thanks, Susan Morgan, for allowing me to come. It was pretty interesting, but at the end of the day, it's 4 hours of my life that I'll never get back. There's a couple of things that came out of it that I wanted to talk about. Actually, one, basically. Everybody's told me since I've moved here that if you've seen one Oregon County, you've seen one Oregon County. And I do understand that and the reasoning behind it. We seem to be aligning ourselves a lot and looking at Jackson and Josephine a lot for a direction and for guidance, and we try to get on board with them. We rush through a support of their marijuana tax, and we hear an awful lot about Jackson and Josephine, but there's a mountain that separates us from them. There's a mountain range that separates us from them. They are nothing like we are over here. They are interior. They have a highway. They have an international airport over there. I think that we'd be better spending our time trying to align ourselves with Coos and Douglas County, who are both coastal counties. I mean, the three of us, we don't even have as many people living in the three counties as there are in the city of Medford, I don't think. We're completely different people over here. We're aquatic based, they're inland. Different climate, different people, different problems. And I'd really like to see us spending more time trying to work with the commissioners up in Coos and Douglas. I heard one of them protest when a commissioner from Josephine mentioned something about Southern Oregon. He stood up and said, we don't want to be included in that. We're not part of that, Don't call it Southern Oregon because that's not us. And we took Julie from them. We took the best thing they had. Everything else is just scraps after that. So, I'd prefer to see us spend more time focusing on our fellow aquatic people on the coast and trying to make nice with the people over in Jackson and Josephine. Every night on the news you hear Jackson and Josephine officials, Jackson and Josephine officials. You never hear Jackson, Josephine, and Curry officials. We're the small forgotten stepchild over here, and that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we're going to move on to 5 presentations. Curry Health Network Regulatory Feasibility Study for Inpatient Beds and Brookings Emergency Room. Ms. Williams? Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Virginia Williams.
Pull one down, please. There you go. Both of them.
Both of them.
There you go.
My name is Virginia Williams. I am a resident of Curry County, and today I wanted to share with you some important information about steps that Curry Health Network is taking to improve medical services throughout the county. It started actually back in February, that fateful day when Huskenagin went out, and we realized how vulnerable our communities were in an emergency preparedness situation, but also financially vulnerable because that market serves a large percent of what Curry Health Network provides. And I was very confident that the way to mitigate this from happening in the future was to get the emergency room open at the existing facility on 5th Street as soon as possible. And in retrospect, I realized that may have seemed a little hasty, and I was grateful. Actually, Ms. Gold actually came to the board of directors and requested that they slow things down and really evaluate if that was in the best interest of Brookings, or could there be more done? And that more done has been an interest of many residents for a long time, to expand inpatient services to the Brookings market. And so the board of directors requested that I find an independent agency that would study not a full financial feasibility study, because those are expensive and they are long and drawn out, but really what the board wanted me to have determined was what would the regulatory environment look like if we were to move forward? Meaning, would it be advisable? Would it be legal? What would the impacts be to the network? Again, not focusing on the financial, but just more the regulatory side. Being a critical access hospital, having mileage requirements, having our facility in Brookings grandfathered in, what would that really look like, and were there any opportunities for that? So we actually contracted with Portland State University with the Mark Hatfield School of Government, and Jason Fowler and Andrew, I can't pronounce his last name, I'm sorry, actually did the legwork on this. It's interesting to note, usually when I work with a consultant, there's a lot of back and forth. That's not how this study went at all. We simply worked with them to state the initial questions that we wanted answered, and they went and did their own research and presented back to me. I think it was in very early August, almost a final rough draft. Literally the only thing we did was we standardized Curry Health Network throughout the document. They had Curry Emergency Medical, or I don't remember. But by and large, their content and their conclusions were theirs. It was reviewed by Phil Kiesling, who is no longer at that agency, and Mr. Nishishiba reviewed that. Again, we were looking primarily at federal and state laws that would either allow or preclude us from moving forward with any type of initiative like this. Essentially, the fundamental conclusions were that it would be detrimental for Curry Health Network to entertain moving any inpatient beds down into the Brookings market. Essentially, and this report is available in its entirety on our website. If you go under the About Us, you can see there's the feasibility study is there. It's a very dense document. They really reviewed all of the laws and regulations. But essentially, they stated that if, in fact, we were to split our beds, it could jeopardize our critical access hospital. It would likely not continue to be grandfathered in. And if, in fact, any organization looks to put inpatient beds down there, it will likely be subject to a certificate of need through the state of Oregon. And so, given this information, as I said, in August, the board had actually directed me to move forward with the emergency room in Brookings. We're coming into yet another winter. The Hoosokanagan Road, as we all know, as great a job it was done to get that thing open for us. It will be yet to see what will happen this winter, but we need to be prepared to provide services to the Brookings market and to protect our market share in the event that we lose that road or others in the future. The executive summary would state that there is absolutely a community need for the emergency room. Statistics show that 20% of adults in our society seek emergency services annually. 14,000 residents in our Southern County have to travel 27 miles in either direction to receive that type of care. And the statistics show that 90% of patients that are seen in an emergency room are definitively treated and what we call streeted. They're sent back home or they're sent home with a family member, but they're essentially discharged. 7% require an inpatient admission, and an additional 3% require to be transferred to a higher level of care. We'll get into some of those situations where that will be possible directly from Brookings, which is not currently the situation. So we are looking to increase our market share and keep our business local here in Oregon. If we have a healthy bottom line, we all know what that means, so we can continue to expand services for our county wherever those needs might be. So the case statement, and this is, I kind of went over this a little bit, but the lack of prompt emergency room services is of interest to us. I don't know if you're aware, but in the last month we did have another patient show up on a Saturday afternoon in our parking lot that required us to perform CPR, transfer by ambulance to an emergency room. I don't know the disposition of that individual. I've been told it was not good. The Oregon laws were paved and changed back in 2015 to allow this to occur, and in 2019, the building was approved by Oregon Health Authority with the existing building codes, and that's an important piece to keep in mind. And then the weather impacts of last year just demonstrated our vulnerability. The current walk-in clinic service is provided by a physician's assistant and a nurse. There are no physicians currently working in our same-day walk-in clinic. True emergency situations are only dealt with by dialing 911. Although we do have staff that are trained there to perform CPR, we don't have a crash cart. We don't have the means to fully stabilize a patient. And every day, people present to our walk-in clinic and are transferred to an emergency room. On average, 3 ambulances a day. I was down there a couple weeks ago. 7 ambulances picked up patients out of that urgent care that day. In the future, we'll have it licensed by Oregon Health Authority. It'll be fully functional 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. We will staff it with board-certified or board-eligible emergency room physicians. We will have trauma-certified nurses working there 24/7, in addition to respiratory therapists and other ancillary staff members for sure. We will be able to provide stabilizing care and treatment and or transfer if necessary. And to offset the need for not emergent, not urgent situations, we have opened and have been currently running what we call same-day appointment services. So if you or a loved one wake up, you're feeling a little sick, maybe you've been coughing all night, maybe your child is under a fever all day yesterday, not feeling well, but really not, in your opinion, rising to the level that you need an emergency room, 6 days a week from 8 till 6, we will staff what are called same-day visits. We will start publicizing this phone number. Call this phone number, make an appointment. We will do everything we can to get you in that day. Obviously, those days can fill up, so I can't guarantee a same-day appointment, but I guarantee we will provide those services 6 days a week for those first come, first serve. It does mean if you walk into CMC and you do not have an appointment and you need to be seen, EMTALA will require us to offer the emergency room services to all of those patients. We cannot turn away people, and we cannot even be perceived as turning away people from needing care from a physician that we have on site there. Currently, if you suffer a heart attack, severe respiratory distress, stroke, significant fractures, or abdominal emergencies, as I said, and you hit CMC today, you're being transported by 911 out. In the future, we will be able to care for those patients immediately in that emergency room. That's the difference of 27 minutes. If you're having one of these events in Brookings and need to get to an emergency room picked up by an ambulance, and I've got some staggering statistics about the length of time in an ambulance, or the distance, or the time until you get definitive treatment on mortality rates for a few of these types of situations. So how do we improve outcomes? This one is interesting. It says for additional miles transported. So this is assuming you have a life-threatening event, you've been picked up from an ambulance, and they are transporting you to the nearest facility. If you're within 6.2 miles, the death rate is 5.8%. If you increase that distance just to 13 miles, your chance of death increases to 8.8%. That is significant. By having that emergency room available in that community, most residents will be under that 13-mile distance. Obviously, you've got folks on the perimeter. It's not perfect for everybody. We don't have that 6.2 miles covered perfectly. If you happen to have a heart attack and you need to have catheterization or go to a cath lab, if you can get there in less than 2 hours, your mortality rate is 4.9. If it grows to 3 or 4 hours or beyond, your death rate increases to 6.5%. Again, that is significant. If we can stabilize you right there, and CalOR can set up transport to get you to a cath lab either over in Medford or up in Bay Area, we can meet that 2-hour time frame. Right now, we just can't do it. It just takes too long. If you have an asthma mortality, an asthma condition that requires you to travel either by ambulance or on your own to an emergency room, if you arrive within 10 to 20 minutes, your likelihood of death is 1.09. And as you can see, as that time increases, the death rate continues to increase. And the last one I have for you is sepsis. Sepsis is a rapidly developing infection that takes over your body. Your system shut down very, very quickly. I will say sepsis is kind of hard to diagnose initially because people's conditions just rapidly decline. They could walk in and actually be talking and maybe have a mild grade fever, and within a certain period of time, they are in full kidney failure and other bad things are happening. So time is of the essence to get treatment started when sepsis is identified. Having the emergency room there and having additional support of pharmacy, we will be able to get those antibiotics on board right away. And again, lowering that mortality rate significantly by the hour. The financial data is strong. I would say to you, we used actual data wherever we could. So we used our own internal data. We used data from CalOR. We used data from what's called OSHPD, which is a public agency that requires hospitals in California to admit or to submit all of their admission criteria, and by that you can sort on that data set by zip code. So we were able to see exactly how many patients were being seen in Sutter's emergency room. We see how many patients then are admitted for their services. We know that 30% of our zip code data from our emergency room comes from the Brookings market, and so our business plan took all of this into account, and we do believe that the net revenue, this is not gross charges, this is actually what we expect to collect on a monthly basis, will be approximately $800,000. Our staffing expenses will run us about $410,000, and I would mention to you that that includes staffing these positions with temporary folks, and temporary folks typically cost us from 50 to 70% more than a hired staff. I can tell you we're having already very good success with filling some of these positions with full-time people that are wanting to come here and join our network. And so I don't expect the cost to really end up there.
Can we applaud on that one? That's
yes,
tough. That's
that is,
great.
it's a great thing. And I'll show you the economic impact next, but At $410,000, you can see that there is a significant margin to be earned if we can do this right. I would say also that when we were looking at these numbers and they just kind of looked too good, and we all said that to ourselves, in our business plan, we actually reduced the revenue by 20% as a contingency, and we increased staffing costs 20% as a contingency. So we are planning that maybe our numbers are off a little bit, and 20%, not quite a little bit, more than I like, but that's best practice, that we actually look at worst case scenarios. Capital expenses, we expect in the next 24 months we'll need to spend about $1.75 million. That equipment goes to replacing the CT scanner, which is necessary to run an emergency room. It replaces a nuclear medical camera, which is necessary to rule out cardiac conditions, and other smaller pieces of equipment, but they're still expensive. Economic growth, this is interesting, and I'm not going to go over each one of these, but you can see that the Oregon Association of Hospitals and Health Systems is always interested in demonstrating the value of healthcare to our society. And they actually work with economic planners, and they've determined that this is data for our county, that for each 10 jobs in the hospital sector that are added, it will generate another 6.4 jobs in that same sector. So we're anticipating adding 33 new positions, which will equate to 21 additional jobs elsewhere. So that's at Fred Meyer, it's at the, Kuntai restaurant, whatever those other sectors might be. The output multiplier says that for every $1 million of services or goods produced by the hospital, another $390,000 is produced in other sectors. We expect to see $10 million of services generated, which is another $3.9 million that we will see economic growth and impact in our county. You can see the gross state product. I mean, it's just all positive, and just continues to tell us that this is the right thing to do. There is, I think it's important to say this, but we're not here to rape the public. We are here to be financially viable. And we do that. We're a not-for-profit organization. We're interested in bringing services back to our community or adding additional services that currently we just don't have the funds to do. I don't want to get into the litany of what those things may or may not be. We have a list of things that we would like to provide without the funding necessary to make that happen. I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you. Thank you to all of the individuals and the entities that supported us, but a special thanks to Advanced Health. Advanced Health is the CCO that provides Medicaid services to our residents, mostly to the north, although they have some presence down in Brookings. They stepped forward and said, Curry, how much do you need? We knew we needed $1.2 million in operating expenses to cover those first 3 months. They agreed to extend us a short-term line of credit. And by that I mean it needs to be paid back within the year so that that loan doesn't hit our long-term debt. We're unable to take on any more long-term debt. Our balance sheet just cannot handle that. What I would also say too, and this is kind of on a side, Curry Health Network was allocated $2 million through the last legislative budget session, but those funds were allocated out of lottery bonds and not the general funds. And we learned that the lottery bonds are much more restrictive. You can only use it on capital, so bricks and mortar and expensive equipment. Cannot use it for operating expenses, and the funds don't become available until sometime in 2021, the earliest. That is not going to work for us. So I've been working with David Brocksmith and Dallas Hurd, and together they are working with the legislative team up there so that potentially in February or March, when the short session budget is taken up again, that they can actually move these funds from the lottery over to the general funds. That would make everything better for us, would make funds available more easily and more rapidly, and allow us to use that potentially to pay down the $1.2 million that we're going to ultimately use from Advanced Health. Questions?
Commissioner Gold?
I just have one about the study. Was CMS or Center for Medicaid, Medicare Services, were they consulted in this study?
So I don't have the study with me, and I do not believe that they actually called CMS. I think that what they were just purely looking at is as regulations were written today and or recent case law. But I do not recall that the study stated that they conducted any interviews.
Okay, one last question. You mentioned that if people came to the ER, they had to be serviced, which I think we all know. Would they be charged ER rates even though they meant to go someplace, say like an urgent care or something like that?
So it is an emergency room. We will mirror the exact same charges that we have here in Gold Beach for emergency services. We are going to make every effort for people to know for same-day appointments, call this. We literally don't have enough space in that building to run an urgent care and an emergency room. One of the things that we've been talking with creatively with Dallas Hurd and David Brocksmith is potentially additional funding, not just for the Brookings market, but Gold Beach doesn't have an urgent care. We don't have walk-in services here. So if you need services, you're hitting that emergency room. That is true. We will triage you and we will put you through, if you've got a lower acuity situation, you will see a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner. Those will generate much lower emergency room charges, but you will receive a bill as an emergency room patient if you seek services, and those are the services that we have available to you. After this is all done, and I get to take a little breather, mostly my staff get to take a breather from this, we're interested in working with CMS to understand if we could grandfather in additional off-site locations down in the South County, because currently the legislation will not allow us to do that. If we provide additional services, they have to be on our existing property. They're no longer grandfathering in locations. But it doesn't make much sense to me that CMS would want a county or an organization like ours to invest dollars in brick and mortar when we have locations available throughout our county that we could better utilize to enhance services. And so I'm interested in that dialogue. I've already kind of broached the topic with them. They're interested in learning more about what our ideas are. But again, I don't have any business plans to say what we would do with it. What I can say to you and what I shared with the Brookings City Council is we are out of space. We are out of space in this hospital. We have been creatively moving people around and using every inch of it for patient care that we possibly can. And down at CMC, we're really out of space. So we need to find alternate solutions, and potentially at some point in the future we can look at an urgent care off-site. We just don't have the means or the ability to do it right now. So our answer to that is the same-day appointments.
Okay, one last question. When do you expect to be open?
Yep, I can't answer that. And I won't answer that for a very specific reason. I can't give a date and then miss that date and have the public show up there and have a real disaster on my hands. What I can tell you is that the Oregon Health Authority is planning to be on site November 5th, 6th, and potentially the 7th to survey us. Once that survey is completed and we know what gaps exist with licensing, we will be able to then predict a date much better than I can do right now. And so surveys, 5th, 6th, and 7th, opening to be determined, and we will let everybody know. We'll blast it everywhere so people know on this date, emergency room will be open.
Well, I'd like to say a couple things. First of all, thank you to you and your staff for working so hard on this and trying to expedite this continually through conversation that I've had with you. You guys have done a great job with this. To make the public clear on this, emergency room is going to be one price, and the daycare thing is going to be another deal, so that the public is fully informed on that, and we don't get 100 phone calls saying, you know.
Correct. So if a patient were to call and make an appointment in a same-day clinic, they are being charged the same clinic rates as everybody else being seen in any of our clinics. I don't know what that daily rate is, but that visit rate. There are levels, so if you're really sick and they do a bunch of tests, the charge would go up a little, but same-day appointments will have clinic rates, and they will be no higher than our same-day rates at the clinic that we offer now with our PAs.
Perfect. So everyone's clear on that.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to say was, the level of service that this is going to bring to South County and potentially the lives that will be saved from this. Again, I just want to thank you guys for moving forward with this as quickly as you did. Thank David Brocksmith and Hurd for being up in Salem and being a large voice, and I'm just proud of this to happen. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you very much. This is some of the best news that I think this county has had in a long, long time. equally good news. The professionalism, the relief from the citizens, from all of us. I see this pulling our county together. There's a community aspect to this that with your board, your care providers, all the employees, the study bears it out. It's just a really good day for this county, and I just can't think of any better word than good, positive relief for, as you just said, and you outlined, lives that can be saved and will be saved.
You've also got some pretty sharp minds on your board, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we're going to do our quarterly reports. County phone system server upgrade proposal. Dan Springer.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Springer with County Electric. Do they need a copy? I can. Oh, perfect. County Electric IT services for the county. So I'm here today to discuss the phone system. As you know, the phone system had some major issues a while ago, and we mitigated those with some emergency measures. The existing phone system was originally put in around 2008, 2009, as far as I know. It was then upgraded around 2012, and it's been running in that state ever since. It's an enterprise-grade phone system that's digital, voice over IP, and it meets all the needs of the county. It integrates with the 911 dispatch center, and it provides all of the necessary phone tree options and things that the county uses. At this point, the system is running, but it's at risk. So there's 3 options that the county can take. The first option is to do a complete upgrade of the existing system, which I did put in the as option 1 there on the information I gave you. We did a ballpark figure for that. We did not get an official quote because that would require on-site vendor to look at and to make sure that we are actually getting exactly what we want and that what we have is exactly what we need. But the ballpark on that was $125,000 according to the vendor. The second option is to do an in-place upgrade, which means we upgrade just the parts that are damaged or that are failing right now, and that would let you use all of your existing phones and peripherals that the phone system uses. The phones that you're using are out of date. They function, but they are out of date. So, for example, with a digital phone, you can plug the phone into the network and then your computer into the phone and piggyback off. Those phones are older technology, so they're much slower. So they slow your data speed. Newer phones do not do that. But an in-place upgrade will allow you to use, there's the guaranteed compatibility where all of your existing equipment would function. And that upgrade cost is, there's an attached proposal with that, and the official proposal on that is $56,624.61. And then the third option, of course, is to go out with an RFP and search for a new phone system, a different phone system. That option is not recommended by us from a technical perspective, simply because the existing phone system has all the pieces and parts in place to work with Frontier and their system for the 911 dispatch center, and a newer phone system. I couldn't guarantee what that would look like or what that might cost, and quite honestly, it might take longer than the existing system can last. So the system that you have is still functional, but there's no longer any redundancies in place. So a failure means downtime. So the sooner we can alleviate that, the better.
Okay. Commissioner Gold?
I just have a question on the second proposal. I know technology changes all the time. Are there any guarantees how long this system would last if we went with option 2 or proposal 2?
Well, with option 2, it's it's more like a phased approach. So we wouldn't allow you to upgrade to something that's out of date. We would upgrade you to things that are basically in option 1. You're just not getting the full boat. You're not upgrading everything at once. So the software level and the licensing might be a lesser level to be compatible with all your existing equipment, your existing phones. But the servers that you put in, the new servers that are in that proposal, would be at the same level as option 1. So there would be no step backwards if you chose to continue the upgrade over, say, a 2-year or 3-year period.
So I guess my next question is, do we really need all the extra bells and whistles with option 1? Would they really be used here in this
Well,
county?
there's no extra bells and whistles other than the fact that you're replacing all of your existing.
It's just
So the
happening
phones,
in one
those
big
phones
swoop.
are from 2008, so they're already aged pretty well.
I won't even tell you how old my phones are at home. So.
So it's never a good practice to let things age to the point of failure. But because it is such a big jump in cost, a phased approach does make sense. But option 1, the difference between option 1 and option 2 is not features or function. It's upgrading the existing system you have. Option 1 is a complete and full, almost like it were brand new deployment. And option 2 is doing it more of we're going to replace what we absolutely have to get you back to a healthy state. And then we would recommend budgeting out a full approach so you'd get to option 1, but over a time.
Okay.
All right. Anything further? I have a question on because we have you here. Where are we with the pricing on the
Servers.
the county servers? Because I've asked for that as well.
So,
And also the one server that we have to continually buy the hard drive for or there's something that we have to continually buy because it keeps breaking.
I'm not
Okay.
aware of that.
All right.
Where we reach capacity, the servers can't handle anymore, so.
Oh, that's okay. So
Sorry,
that's
I'm not a tech guy.
That's your virtual system, your virtual infrastructure. So the county uses virtual technology, which is it's a good practice because it limits the amount of hardware necessary for all of your systems. So you can run, say, 100 different servers in a virtual environment off of 3 physical servers instead of buying 100 physical servers. Your current system is reaching capacity, so that might be what you were talking about.
Yeah, I'd asked for a bid to see what it was going to cost to replace
Correct,
that.
correct.
And I was told that we would have one shortly.
We're working on that, but see, what happened was the sheriff purchased a brand new system for his function, and in doing so, that's going to offload a lot of his data off of the county system. So it really offers a major relief to that. And at this point, your critical piece is the phone system.
Okay.
So that's our focus, is getting the sheriff offloaded onto his new system and the phone system itself. A ballpark for the virtual system, when it was originally purchased in 2012, it was around $100,000. But again, we want to do our due diligence and make sure that you're going to actually purchase what you need and not purchase a major system that you'll never meet capacity. And we also don't want to underbid it either. So
Okay.
We'll definitely have people come on site as necessary and do a full inventory of your usage. But it makes sense to get the sheriff out of there before we purchase data storage space that's being used by someone who's no longer going to use it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a real quick one, Daniel. So if we went with option 2, I guess what I'm getting at is so many times we just put a Band-Aid on everything and it costs us more money in the long run.
Right.
Is that what's going to happen?
Option 2 is designed not to do that as much as possible. There may be licensing that you have to purchase to work with your existing gear that would then have to be upgraded again when you get newer phones. But from what I'm told, I'm not the phone system expert, I'm not the vendor, but from what I'm told by the vendor, there's very little, if any, compatibility issues by doing phase 2.
Okay.
So it's designed to be a phased approach. So you're buying things once, and then you can build upon them as you grow.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Colon, did you have a question for him? Yes.
Actually, it's not a question so much as a report on the assessment and taxation computer system, which we've been having some difficulty with. So I wanted to make sure that Mr. Springer was still here in case you had any questions about this. So if you'd permit me, I'd just take a couple of minutes here.
Sure.
Jim Colon, County Assessor. You may be aware that recently we've had some issues with our assessment and taxation computer system. The issue seems to have been a hardware issue, and it was as a result of the Bonneville power outage we had a month or so ago. What that did was it took down our tape drive that allowed us to do our daily backups of the assessment data. We went through a fairly lengthy process working with our software vendor, trying to figure out what was at issue, not just with our software vendor, but also our IT folks, and really appreciate their help. What I would say is the presentation Mr. Springer just gave you, you could just as well substitute county A&T hardware for the phone system. I mean, when he says your system is at risk, I think you need to take that to heart, because he told us our system was at risk, and we got a real scare from it. In any case, we were able to come up with a plan. We found some parts to replace and add to our computer system. We got those parts in last Friday. We got an expert down from Beaverton to do the install of them for us, and then Tuesday and then Monday night we did our daily backup, and Tuesday morning we're able to test it, not taste test it, just test it, and the test came out okay. So we're cautiously, optimistically crossing our fingers that this system will last us at least another 18 months. As I told you during budget sessions, we needed to replace this system. We're currently investigating 2 other widely used systems, widely used in the state of Oregon, and we plan to make a selection coming up here in December and bring that selection to you for approval. Either vendor will be able to begin the conversion process for us in January. Process will take 18 months, and so we'll be wanting to get started with this.
All right. Thank you.
I guess I got no questions for you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to go to B. I know we're kind of getting up against the 10 o'clock. About how long are you going to be, Charlene? Okay, so we're going to go to quarterly reports, finance and human services. Charlene? Good morning.
Good morning. I think I need the mouse.
On your right.
It's on the table.
So I'm approaching, or just past actually, my 60th day with the county, and I am providing you a 90-day activity overview report, if I can get to it. Here we go. So this isn't a financial report, it's a departmental activity report. I think I'm a little shorter than I understood before I walked up here. So when I first started with the county, I was charged with evaluating efficiency and doing a cost-benefit analysis of operations. I've been working on those things, and I started within my department. I presented Julie with a first 90-day report for that. Unfortunately, it's 6 pages long, so this is an overview of what the things that I've been working on there. I looked at operations and how they could be streamlined and the workload equalized in the department. I compared what's happening now in finance, payroll, and human resources to look at more cost-effective and more modern approaches to managing those activities in my office. And I do have a detailed report for you, but the attachments and the supporting documentation are too lengthy to provide in this sort of an environment. Oh, sorry, I already passed it. The Human Resource Department, I also looked at efficiency, cost-benefit analysis, and the associated expenses, operations, current processes, and they're what come sort of from people becoming comfortable with working in silos. Those softwares and those processes are outdated, they're cumbersome. I've done preliminary research, and I'm having a presentation done for the Director of Operations and staff to look over returns on that type of software. I'd like to invite anybody else that would like to attend on November 4th here in this room from 8:45 to noon, different companies. Thank you. And at that time, it was the only really way for me to be able to show the contrast between what we're using in my office and what's actually available with current software technologies and how affordable the more advanced software applications are. I also found out that 2 years ago, the systems in our office upgraded, and our finance department and human resource department elected not to have the county migrate to those. We've been paying for them this whole time. So I'm also having our current company give a presentation of what we could have been using over the last 2 years that we have been paying for. And we can contrast that with a common feature of what I consider a more progressive software. It's the software that's being used in Ashland and Astoria and I believe 9 communities across Oregon right now. We are kicked off for the wage study reclassification process, and Julie and I have started the spreadsheets and collecting the analysis. I'm proud to say that the company that we contracted with for the wage study and pay equity portion of the human resource projects was just taken on responsibility for the company's LGPI that we were using for the job classifications. Earlier, Julie mentioned we weren't getting any response from that company. They were found to have certain challenges internally. They were dissolved, and the company that we're contracting with, HR Answers, has absorbed some of their responsibilities while the regulatory agencies decide what to do for that services that they were providing. So we're on a good track there for getting good information for what we're doing. I want to thank all of the department heads and their staff for returning their work job descriptions. Those are going to be incorporated in the permanent records for the reclassification study, and we're using that feedback to develop that pay equity analysis and perform that wage study. The next steps that we're working on, we actually have to break up each individual job description into categories that are fall under the pay equity laws and the reclassification studies and evaluate the correlations between pay scales that way. And those will also be a permanent part of those records and open for evaluation. Our goal again is to be done January 31st with that part of the process. This I just mentioned, Cassell Connect migrated 2 years ago to a Cassell Connect online. At that time, our department heads lost real-time access to the departments and the ability to drill down into their budgets. They have been getting their reports on the shared drive in a PDF format, and I'm hoping to resolve that very shortly here. Oregon, unfortunately, the county is on the Oregon's delinquency list for audits, and I was in the process of resolving that, and they put the county on a corrective action plan. I'm in the process of writing that for us. We have inadequacies in the audits over the last few years, and those haven't been corrected to the satisfaction of the state, and so I'm in the process of developing a plan to get us in compliance, hopefully by next year when we have our next audit under the 1920 audit. We'll be able to have that fixed.
So the state has found us out of compliance?
We are on the delinquency list, and
I see that.
and we are, yes, deficient. We have been found out of compliance, and in my 90-day report for Julie, I turned in the supporting documentation for what that means and to show what's happened. The county so that's the quarterly reports for that, sorry. The quarterly reports for each department head, I did them a little different than what they've been posted in the past. I did your current expenditures with the proposed budget, or the adopted budget, sorry, and then a percentage, so each department head will know where they are for the year in their budget. In my other environments, those were just called budget versus actual, and it gives departments decision-making guidance for what they're doing the rest of the year and lets them know where they are with a perspective to the bigger picture. That was my goal in this situation. However, with the challenges with the software, I had to post them in a PDF format for this first time. Again, I'm hoping to have that resolved long before we do our mid-year review.
I want to go back to one thing on the CAP, the corrective action. Have you written that, or are you in the process of writing that right now?
Yes, I am. And Jefferson County, their finance director is a CPA. She has experience for many years in this environment, and she's graciously offered to mentor me. And since this is my first time at county level, I'm going on the 24th and 25th to spend 2 days with her. They have the expanded version of Cassell that this county has not employed, and she's going to help offer some guidance so I can be confident that our plan will be within what the state expects.
All right, thank you.
Then finally, conferences and training. So one of the things that I was encouraged to do was reach out to peer entities and professional associations. I joined the Oregon Government Finance Officers Association. I'm going to that conference right after I go to Jefferson County. And starting January 1st, I start the process for getting certified in the finance officers. Then as soon as that program's completed, I will do the federal level certification. Again, I'm going to the one-on-one training with Jefferson County. Jefferson County and Josephine County have been a tremendous support to me in trying to interpret the things that I'm finding and give that CPA analysis. Josephine County has comptroller experience and more than 10 years at county level, and they have freely shared their insight with what I'm going through in our office to be confident that I'm not having any training curves or anything with that from the transition. I'm also attending the Association of Oregon Counties conference in November. At that time, they've started a new HR track for Oregon, and we're going to partner together to address beneficial solutions in union negotiations and developing certain procedures that need to be consistent throughout the state. So I'll be going for 2 days at that time, and I think that was it.
Commissioner Gold?
I have one question. You mentioned at the beginning of your report something about software inadequacies. What types of software are you looking at to replace, or?
Well, right now, we haven't done an RFP, so I'm just trying to get these companies to come in to show the contrast. I'm sorry I keep using this analogy, but for me, our Cassell software is much like trying to navigate a DOS world in a Windows reality.
So you're looking for a new accounting software is what you're saying?
I am trying to see. And the county pays $12,000 for something that they're only utilizing about 1/3 of what's been available to them. The average cost for entities our size is $25,000 a year, and that's low end. And so what I've done in the report is provide supporting documentation from the finance associations to show this isn't just something a new girl is saying, this is the way the industry is run. And softwares can run up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, so saying $25,000 to $35,000 a year on a low end is really very conservative, but the power that it would give our department heads and our commission, especially when we're working on the strategic business plan and our department heads can have real-time access to their data, they can develop their 5-year plans, we can put the strategic plan and the bigger picture of operations in and do 10-year projections. Those things are done with the click of a button right now. And at this time, I can't even pull out vendor expenses because of the restrictions in the way the software is right now. And for example, one of the challenges that I had is some of our reports are adding revenues to expenses to give me my bottom line. So I provided documentation of the tickets with our software company for Julie so that you could be sure that this is not a skills issue. This is really something that's going on in our software. Our software company is working on it. They pulled the files and they're looking for an evaluation of the data. And
So the software is adding revenue?
some of the reports that are in the information are pulling up very inaccurate data.
That's
And
scary.
in order to document that, in order to support that, I have provided documentation to show that there's just a few challenges.
So it wasn't just a matter of pushing the wrong button or something, kind of like calculators,
Actually,
garbage in, garbage
In the software
out?
the county uses, it's more difficult than that. You actually, everything's coded by a long GL number, and you have to be able to identify the vendor by a code, and then you have to identify each piece of information that you want. You can't just pull expenses by vendor, which is what I'm used to. I should be able to pull up expenses by vendor and then look at 3 years of what we've spent on that. You cannot do that in our current software. It's more complicated than that. And when we do pull the reports, some of the information's missing. Some of it's turned out to be posting errors. That's natural. Humans tend to make mistakes. And others have been the reports themselves, the way that they are formed, just produce inaccurate information. So our software company is working on it right now.
So how many counties use Cassell? Because it seems
Not
to
very
me
many.
okay, that's your problem, is the Cassell.
I'm sorry. So there's two parts to that. One, I've been operating with about 1/3 of the tools I need to do my job. Cassell has add-ons. One's called My Excel, and I had a miscommunication in my office that I believed that this county didn't use that tool. And two, 2 years ago, the finance office elected not to migrate to Cassell's improved system, and that caused a disconnect between their upgrades and what we're using. So the correlation between those and our own server moving, not an IT person, I am assuming has caused these integrity issues. It's not uncommon. In other softwares, just if your power goes out, you might have an integrity issue, but you can just restore the data when you become aware. These seem to have gone on a long time without awareness.
Just a couple comments, okay? The quarterly reports that you posted as PDFs for the department heads, I really hope they all go in and look at them, because the new way that they're posted is so much better for me.
Thank you.
I was able to go in there and look at a department and see where, I was concerned about their wages. And I could see one of them was like at 65%. I mean, we're 3 months into the budget and they were already at 65% of their budgeted amount for their salary.
Thank you, Julie. Now, those budget versus actuals are normal tools that I've used in other environments, and they were very challenging to generate in this software.
Yeah, just to be the devil's advocate, some of the expenses in departments happen at a certain time. Maybe they all happen in the beginning of the year or whatever, so 65%, isn't always
That's true, and the department head would be aware. If they're uploading one major expense for the whole year at the beginning, they're not going to be concerned if they're 80%. They might think, oh, wonderful, I only spent 80%. However, if you're looking at balancing something over the quarter and you're 80%, you have a concern, but this gives power to the department head to better evaluate where they are in their budgets.
as long as they know the reason for the 80% or the 60% or whatever.
I apologize, the titles on those reports this time were wrong. The system crashed right before I was trying to post them, and I didn't catch that the title had defaulted back to its original.
Okay.
But yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Before break.
Oh, go ahead.
We have two Coos Creek Electric Cooperative reps here. We move ahead to an action item. It'll only take about 5 minutes, Mr. Chair. We'll get them back to work.
We're already 10 minutes over.
We've only been working an hour.
I understand, but there are state laws that we have to do things. What's the item?
8B, permission.
I've also got the treasurer sitting here.
So then we'll go to break.
All right, yeah, let's, at this time, it's 10 after, let's take our 10-minute break, and we will resume at 10:20. Thank you. On October 16th, and we're going to skip ahead here on the agenda to a discussion item, and it is 8B, permission of Coos Curry Electric and Gold Beach to cross county property. Commissioner Boyce?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I've known both these guys since they're born, and both born in Gold Beach. Don't hold that against them. They've been longtime Coos Curry employees, part of the 66 that are from Coquio, Port Orford, Brookings, and Gold Beach. This map here represents a project they're on. They're working closely with the city of Gold Beach. If you look at my drawing here, this is their South County parking lot, 101 Fairgrounds over here. They're building a new storage building here. Zane and Dad, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a proposed 200-foot culvert. They're trying to properly collect the drainage on this large piece of property here, in addition to the building. And the county owns the property right on this side of the fence. Correct, guys?
Correct.
And so this drainage right here is a big city drain. It's about 28 inches in diameter. They need to go about 8 or 10 feet, go under here, put in a 6-inch pipe to connect the culvert to the drain. Good system. They just need the permission from us to cross the county line there. Anything you want to add, gentlemen?
Well, I think you hit the high points.
There's an existing catch basin there, and it would just be to tap into that existing catch basin, and then it'll send it on its way.
It'll look like when you started, when you're done?
Mm-hmm. Or better.
So moved.
Wait, I have a question.
Thank you for that motion.
Have you considered buying that property from us? I know.
There you go.
I'm working on that.
There's actually
It's part of the
negotiations that have been taking place for a while between the museum and the county.
in the Historical Society.
In the Historical Society.
Yeah.
But right now, the county is the owner of record.
Right, so a couple of years ago, 2016, I think it was, we approached the Historical Society and asked them to buy it. And we told them we would give it to them at that point. They never followed up with the paperwork to actually purchase it. So I guess you should know it is for sale.
Right. And that's where I started when I met with Will Newdall. He mentioned that culvert was owned by the museum, so I went to the museum, and then when I was looking at the map, I said, that looks like a separate tax lot, and then I found out that Curry County is the owner of record, which is why we're here.
So for a small fee, you may own it.
Well, are you guys looking for an easement?
Correct, access easement.
So, I'm just thinking of my mom, when we did an easement on her property, we got paid for it, or she got paid for it. Just saying.
I'm a Coos Curry fan. I would not be in favor of that. But here, by the way, is the Curry County Historical Society, for reference there, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to move that we give Coos Curry permission for this quick access.
Second. Further discussion?
Oh.
I just want to add, Coos Curry has been wonderful to the county.
Oh,
so,
boy.
So we'll just give them the easement?
So let's just give them the easement.
No dollars on
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
it? Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to get back. We're going to get back to quarterly reports and move to our assessor and taxation master, Jim Colon.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Colon, County Assessor. John, could you pull this one up for us, please?
Which one, Jim? Mr. Assessor?
2019-20 tax summary. I'm going to pass out.
Whoops. Did you say two?
Yeah, that's it. Enlarge it.
This one?
Yeah.
I didn't know how those would look on the screen, so I'm going to pass out.
Just enlarge it. Yeah.
Sweet.
With the mouse?
So, it's that time of year when my office is working diligently to prepare the tax roll and send out the property tax statements. Should be, hopefully, a little later this week, we will be sending out some 20,000 property tax statements to the citizens inside and outside Curry County. One interesting fact is we send about 30% of the property tax statements to property owners that live outside Curry County. So, I mean, we have a pretty good outside the county property ownership here. So the document that I just gave you is a copy of the front page of the tax roll summary. The other pages show what we call code areas, but I find that the information on this front page is pretty interesting. What it shows is tax rates, real market values, assessed values, and taxes imposed by all of the districts that we collect property taxes for in Curry County. This is just information for you. We put these tax rate summaries out on our webpage, and we've got them there for probably at least the last 20 years. And so it's information that's available. You can go look at any time, but this is something that you may be able to use as commissioners to refer to in some of your day-to-day discussions with other taxing districts or other entities. I'll just point out a couple of things on this. The real market value you see in the third column over is about $4.15 billion this year for Curry County. That compares to $3.87 billion for last year. Our highest year in the history of Curry County was in 2007, 2008. You might remember that the market was just going gung-ho back in those days. Our real market value for Curry County got up to $4.44 billion that year. And after 2007, 2008, it dropped for a few years and got to a low in 13-14 of $3.02 billion. We're working our way back up. I'd be looking at maybe 2 more years, assuming, of course, conditions remain the same as they are now, before we pass that high point again. Next thing I'd call your attention to is the assessed value in the next column over. If you're having difficulty reading it, I don't blame you. I am too. $3.17 billion in assessed value. That's the taxable value of the properties in Curry County, and that compares to $3.05 billion last year. And then the final thing I'd like to call your attention to is the final figure down at the bottom of the right-hand column shows you the total taxes that are certified for collection this year of a little over 27 million, 27, almost $28 million we'll be collecting this year. That number is actually down from last year, which is mostly due to School District 17C coming near the end of their bond payments. They have one this year, and they'll have one more next year, and then they'll have paid off their bonding obligations. But this year they reduced their bond payment by quite a bit, by $1.2 million, and that's why we'll be collecting a little bit less taxes this year than last year. Next year, I'm told that they plan to raise that $1.2 billion back up and then get their bond payment paid off. So finally, I would call your attention to the pie chart down in the bottom left-hand corner. Essentially what that's showing us, we've all seen it before, is the percentage of taxes that we collect for the different types of taxing entities. I'm sorry, I haven't been working a mouse up here to show anybody else where we're at, but so what you can see is we're collecting almost 55% of the taxes that we collect for schools. The next highest that we collect for is the cities, and we collect about 6.8% of the property tax we collect goes to the county itself. So that's what I have to tell you about that piece of information. Do you have any more questions on any of that?
More a statement than a question, but go ahead.
Feel free.
Well, the library districts get 5.57% to run the libraries, and the entire county gets 6.85% to run the entire county. That's all I have.
Okay. The next document that I'd call your attention to, John, could you bring up the other one? You have that available? Where is the mouse around someplace?
Commissioner Boyce is doing it actually for you.
But I don't want to control the TV control, you know.
This one.
Okay.
One above it, yeah, right there. There's nothing there. Oh, down in the bottom corner. Oh, the other side. Got to go up a little bit. There it is right there.
Can we make that fit the screen?
Should we come down right there, guys?
That's the same thing as the last one somehow. Can we back out and there it is. It doesn't look like it's going to fit the screen unless you can reduce that down.
It's the lower right-hand corner. There's a percentage.
There you go.
There you go. Go to 75%. Yeah, try that. Want to go to 50%?
Okay.
We won't be able
How
to
did I
see it,
end up
but oh
with it?
well.
We can work with this.
Yeah, you can't see that one.
We can work with 75.
Okay. You're going to want this mouse before it's all over, aren't you?
All right, thank you. Sorry about the technical difficulties. What I have here in front of you now is a summary of where we're at with 2018-19 property tax collections. So the first document I showed you is a document showing you how much in property tax we're going to collect for 1920. This will give you an idea of where we're at for collecting last year's property taxes. And it's really interesting stuff. I could see Commissioner Gold's face just light up when this came up.
Numbers.
I know.
But so when we're talking about this, if we could scoot it over a little bit, I'm going to be talking about the lines by line number, and it's actually over on the far left over there. The other way, if you could, Commissioner Boyce.
You better take this mic.
And we'll need that so I can take you through this. That top line there, it says total amount certified for collection. That, again, this was in 2018-19, just over $28 million. And then the next few lines there show you a breakdown of the type of property that we're collecting the property taxes on. You can see line number 2 is real property, and just over $26 million of the property tax that we'll collect is on real property. So that's about 95% of the properties we're getting property tax from is real property, and that's essentially real property is the land with any improvements built on it. We also have centrally assessed properties that we collect for. Centrally assessed means that the Department of Revenue are doing the appraisals and the assessments on those properties. We have manufactured structures or mobile homes, and I guess line number 3 was business personal property. But again, then we see another total. Line number So line number 7 shows the uncollected balance from the previous years. And as you can see, as you follow this balance down, it goes down pretty quickly in the first 3 years. and we're going to talk about this some more later because it still seems like there's quite a bit of money left there, and there is, but that's mostly due to a court case we have on a certain classification of properties statewide. Line number 8 is just a small figure there, $5,800. Those that represents roll corrections where we actually add value to the roll and collect additional taxes that we weren't aware of when we actually turned the roll in September that previous year. Line number 12 is where we go the other way. When we make corrections to the roll that take value off the rolls for appeals, errors, double assessments, and other corrections. So, we add almost 6,000, but also we're taking off 37,000 during the year. Line 14 is the net tax to collect. So just over $28 million was what we were looking to collect for last year. Line 15 is an interesting amount. This is discounts allowed. You all know that if you pay your property taxes by November 15th, you get a 3% discount.
Oh, yeah.
And so almost $700,000 are the discounts that people are getting in Curry County. Interestingly, that $700,000 amounts to about 2.48%, which means that most people in Curry County are getting their taxes paid by November 15th and really taking advantage of that discount.
That's because they're smart.
Yes.
Can't make that in a bank.
And line 16 then is the total tax that we've collected thus far. Can you scroll down, Commissioner Boyce? So that amount on line 16 equals almost 97% of the total tax that we had to collect, which is a real good figure, and that figure in line 18 shows you 0.9689. So that's indicating that we've collected almost 97% of the tax for 2018 already.
How does that compare with other counties? Just curious.
Well, the statewide average, we tell districts, is calculate that we're going to collect 93% of the taxes in the first year. So I don't know if I really can't tell you if it's any better or any worse than the average. But what I will tell you is, we do it here in Curry County too, is we tell districts when they are looking to budget for how much they'll take in property tax to calculate 93% of what it is that they're certifying to collect. Mm-hmm. So, but I will tell you, 97%, I think that's pretty good.
It is, very.
So then we go for another, it shows you of the amount uncollected, it gives you a breakdown by the type of property again. Line 23 is the total tax that we have not collected yet for 2018-19. And again, here I want to show you that the amount goes down pretty quickly in the succeeding years. And at this point, I want you to compare this to line 24, which is going to show you that amount that I talked about that's under appeal. For communication companies like Charter, Dish, DirecTV, and there's a couple other smaller ones in there. They, in 2009, appealed their value as a value that was set by the Oregon Department of Revenue, but the values increased substantially that year, and so all of those companies appealed those values. And so far, it's been making its way through the courts. Not all of these companies have settled. Some of them have. Our big one here in Curry County, Charter Cable, has not settled yet. So, but essentially, the Oregon Department of Revenue is winning their court cases. So what this shows is a deferred billing credit, is what we call it. And what that is an amount of tax on the amount that those companies don't agree with. So they're paying a small portion of their property tax since 2009, and this is the disputed amount of property tax that is left unpaid until we actually settle that court case. So you can see that we're building up quite a sizable amount over the years since 2009. In fact, the total is $891,000. Commissioner Boyce, you and I have spoken about this before. So once those court cases settle, you can see that the amount, and we collect that $127,000, you can see it's quite a chunk out of the remaining uncollected taxes for some of these years. In fact, if you can scroll over this way,
It's 891,000 total on that line.
what I'd call your attention to is tax year 2012-13. This is the total amount of tax left to be collected for 2012-13, and 91, which is 99,000, and 91,000 of it is this deferred billing credit. So by the time we get that in, there's still only going to be about 8,000 left for that year. Some of the property tax we never collect. We foreclose on properties, as you're aware, and we never collect those taxes until we actually sell those properties and distribute the proceeds from sales back to the taxing districts. That's how those property taxes are made up. But that can be a fairly lengthy process. As you know, we have quite an inventory of those types of properties.
How long does it take to go from, they have 3 years to pay their tax, right? How long does it take for the county to take over that property after those 3 years?
It's about a 7-year process.
Okay.
It's only after you haven't paid your taxes for the 3rd year that the property goes into foreclosure. And the foreclosure of that process takes about a year. And then there's a 2-year redemption period where the people can actually come in and pay all of their property tax and redeem that property. And then going through the final process to make sure you've contacted everybody and then deed the property to the county takes about another year. So about a 7-year process.
That includes the 3 years they were delinquent?
Correct.
Okay. So 4 if after the delinquency.
So then we come to last year and the law changed regarding these deferred billing credits. The citizens wanted to see those companies pay their property tax, and so now they are paying their property tax. Can you scroll back to the left, Commissioner Boyce? Actually, we're getting this figure. So the deferred billing credit would have been $133,000 in 18-19, but those property owners are actually paying their property tax now. And of that amount, I mean, we set it aside because of that amount, we defer 50% we distribute 50% to the districts, and then we hold on to the other 50% in an account to make any adjustments to the final tax amount once all of these appeals are finally settled. So we've got some money just sitting out there that if we do well on the appeals, we'll distribute to the districts. If we lose a little bit, those companies will get some refunds. And those are the high points of this information. But it's really pretty good information. It lets you know what we're getting collected, what's still out there from previous years. maybe you have to be me and Commissioner Gold to get really excited about this kind of stuff because it is just a page full of numbers. But
Oh, and I'm just breathing heavy right now.
I know you are. Do you have any questions about any of this?
Commissioner Boyce?
Just, you referenced the Charter Oregon Department of Revenue case. I really appreciate the work you and Council Huddle have been watching that very close. And so at some point, that will come in handy. So thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I kind of have a question, kind of unrelated to all the numbers. I know we're backlogged in assessments. How many years behind are we right now?
15.
All right, you're referring back to the presentation maybe I made at the Budget Committee last year. I would say that we're probably 10 years behind where we should be. In other words, we are working on a reappraisal cycle of about 15 to 18 years.
Okay.
Due to lack of enough people to put out there to get that work done. That may be improved some by your amnesty program as people report themselves that maybe they have properties out there they didn't get building permits on. Because, as I told you before, our tool for discovering new construction out there is the building permit, or it's actually sending people door to door to find the properties.
So you're working real closely with the building department to take care of this situation, I hope?
This program is in its infancy. I'm hoping they're keeping a list of the properties where they find something and that they will report those things to us.
Yeah, that's going to be really important.
We've asked code enforcement as well as building and planning to report anything that comes in that could be delinquent or not reported. And per your conversation the other day, I think we need to make it clear with the public, and you may want to best do that this is not a property tax amnesty. This is a building permit code violation amnesty program. It's not a property tax amnesty program.
And that's just for the penalties on the building permits, correct? Not the building permits themselves.
Correct.
I don't think I could have said that any better myself, Commissioner Pash. Thank you. So where we'd like to be, Commissioner Gold, is more on a 6 to 8 year cycle. And the reason for that is when my appraiser is out there and maybe they find a barn that was built without a building permit and the barn has existed for 10 years, we can get back taxes for the current year plus the previous 5 years, which is why we'd like to be around that 6 year cycle. If we can only go back 6 years on that 10-year-old barn, obviously the districts are losing 4 years worth of property tax on the value of that barn.
Jim, you had mentioned that you're behind because of staffing issues.
Yes.
I know you recently hired one person. How close are you to being fully staffed that you can get us caught up on the assessments?
We, with this new staff person that we hired, puts us back to 7.5 employees. We had a retirement 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. And so we finally just got that position filled. It took a long time. With this economy that we have now, it's difficult to find employees. And we don't find employees here at Curry County that are experienced in what it is we do. I mean, we find when we find a new person, we're spending a minimum of a year training a new person to do the type of work that we need them to do. And, we've all seen it. There's help wanted signs in almost every business out there. So, I mean, the economy's going well, and
Demand for labor.
It's making it difficult to hire people. So that was a long answer to that. So we're back to 7.5 staff. Ideally, we should be at 10 staff total between assessment and taxation.
All right. Anything else?
All right, thank you. Looking
sir.
forward to next quarterly report. I've got a document with more numbers on it, be about 60 pages, but you thought this stuff was good. You're going to love that.
I was going to say, I can hardly wait.
Yes, Thank you.
Salivating already.
All right, next we have roads, Richard Christensen, our roadmaster. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Board of Commissioners. Richard Christensen, Curry County Roadmaster. Just want to report on where we're at with the road budget. The road budget is looking good overall so far this year with all the challenges and goals that we have. We have a lot of equipment we're trying to buy. We have 2 FEMA events. And with all that, we have paved 3.85 miles of Central County roads through Tidewater Contractors. And we had a change order of $66,000 today that you approved, so thank you. And so that's $850,000, $220,000 a mile. We chip sealed with our staff 18 miles of roads at $41,000 per mile, or $740,000. We striped 466 line miles of roads, not miles of road, but some roads have like 3 lines on it, like 2 fogs line in the center stripe. So we did 466 miles of striping this year so far, or we're done with that project. And we also, our team has installed 2,200 lineal feet of 12-inch to 36-inch storm drains, where we replaced old failing lines with new lines. We auctioned off 20 vehicles on public surplus for $100,000, and we hired a new contract engineer Dyer partnership as needed, which was really huge, considering the FEMA projects we have and facility plans that we need to update. We've been using Dyer for these FEMA projects for bridge repairs and replacements. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more later. And for storm drain evaluations and master plans. And also, we're looking at them to make a 10-year facility plan to help me with next year's budget, and so we can see what we look like the road department for the next 10 years with the current way we're doing business. This year, a big thing is we became a Teamsters 206 union shop, which was has its challenges, and I'll get to that a little bit. We received a $3 million grant. Our team put in for a grant application for a flap grant, and we received an award this summer of $3 million to pave 7.3 miles of Jerry Scott Road in 2022-23. We repaired Willow Creek Bridge. This is a bridge last year that was derated where cranberry farmers couldn't get their cranberries to market because the new load ratings. And we repaired that bridge as of a month ago, so that ready to go this year for them. We had another creek that was, bridge on Edson Creek Road that was derated to 11 tons where no logging traffic could go over it. And we had 3 major logging operations that were unable to cross this bridge. And inside of 4 weeks, we have that bridge open to logging traffic. But it's due to the new Dyer partnership engineering service. They helped us with the traffic control plan and also a load rating where that bridge is really 2 bridges. The original bridge is 53, it was a 1-laner. Then they built another lane next to it in 64. And so we have all the traffic on like the 64 side bridge of the bridge with stop signs at either end with traffic lanes. We spent about $15,000 total, but that bridge is open, and we're going to pursue grants to try to repair that bridge, which will be very expensive. But in the meantime, it's open to logging traffic and local traffic. Another thing we did with bridges this year is we fund exchanged the Morrill Bridge project from a federal project to a state project where road team can manage the project. And right now we're projecting to come in way under budget in our early design. We bought 5 new vehicles for the motor pool and general services, so we updated that fleet with 5 vehicles. We bought and ordered 5 vehicles for the road department and 3 new pieces of equipment so far. And we used the fund exchange program to help pay for some of those vehicles, $500,000, so it wasn't coming out of the road fund. We worked 2,533 hours so far on these emergency FEMA repairs this summer, our team, and with just the labor cost of $225,000. So we're trying to work with FEMA to recoup some of these costs, but it's major intensive with my time, my engineering team, and office manager, and we are hoping to recover 75% of these costs. Currently, we're working on winter storm prep with our storm drain cleaning and culverts. We're doing brush cutting. We're helping Port Orford Dump mow down all their gorse. They have like 10 acres of gorse. So we're using our new heavy equipment in there to mow down all that gorse. We're out to bid right now for next year's chip rock for our chip program for next fiscal year. We're going out to bid here soon for next year's paving projects, which will be in the Port Orford area. We're constantly working on funding from FEMA from the February and April storm events. And I'm going to cut some of this stuff off, but we also, for $1,000, we made our own little training center in the road department, and where we're training our staff at very low cost, where I had the state come in at no cost to train our staff with our flagger certification and also our stormwater maintenance and BMP programs. So they'll be here. They were here last month, and they'll be here again in November. And so the only cost I have for the road department has is our labor time. We don't have to pay hotels per diem, ship people to Salem. I'm bringing the state here, and they're willing to come here for free as long as I have this facility. So that $1,000 was really well spent.
So do they pay for their own motels and everything? Or?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Good.
And the major challenges we have coming up is working with County Council. We're fighting a DEQ violation down at the Port of Brookings Harbor. I believe things are going to go our way on that. Also, Teamsters grievance we've had with our last promotion for our equipment operator. Recently, the state let us know that we can no longer dump landslide material or ditch debris onto their fill site as it's getting full. They need the capacity that's left for their own use. So we have no place to dump our materials. And so we're going to be working aggressively on that. We think we found a place in our own yard that we can fill. And I'm going to talk with DEQ and see what that takes to come into compliance. One of the issues that we've had with this storm events we had with FEMA is they want to know where every drop of dirt goes, that it's a certified site. And we no longer have that. And so we need to develop some certified sites in county ownership for the long-term future of the road department. And so I'm looking at north, central, and south, maybe out towards East Agnes, to have several different sites, so that way, if we have to truck these materials all over the county to one site, it becomes very expensive. So if I could have sites in 4 areas in the county, it would lower our costs. And as we know, road funds, the forest funds are gone. Next year we're projected a $4 million budget shortfall, and so I'm working really hard on trying to reorganize the department to see how we could work with that, and that's going to be part of this facility plan that we're talking about with Dyer. Another big issue we've had is the road department computer system is just so slow. It's not working. We worked on this for the last 18 months and working with IT and past administrators, and it's actually gotten worse, and we're paying more money. We're paying $725 a month now, where we paid nothing before, and our service is worse. And so that's something we need to try to work on, is maybe get a server put back in the road department. I understand years ago they had a server, but it was moved up here into the annex or combined with the annex.
Is that because you don't have a server that it's so slow, or because the strength of the internet isn't that strong?
It's not my expertise, but it's many different issues with the strength of the internet and the capacity of the server, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Can I just make a comment on that? So I did speak with Dan about that, because Dan and Phil are very concerned about the speed of the internet out at the road department. And apparently, the way I understand it, when the county entered into the agreement, we chose the cheap package where the speeds weren't very great, and they're just not adequate for what's happening at the road department. So now we have to go back again.
Right.
Well, if you're losing time
We are.
because of that, it's costing you more in the long run.
It's a real frustration, when I have all the engineers in the department working in GIS on large
Right.
folders, and then the office manager can't work on their stuff, I can't work on my stuff. And it all started out when we were going to get 50 megabytes. I don't know what that means, for $250 a month. So we ended up getting 20 megabytes for $725 a month. We had new lines put into the shop, and everything's
called
just gone
inflation.
worse. And so we're just following direction of what we're being told, and we end up with something else. And I don't know what the answer is. All I know is we're paying $725 a month, and we're worse than we've ever been.
They actually have to leave their computer, go do something, and then come back to see if it's now uploaded. It's terrible. Their speeds are terrible.
Right.
We're wasting a lot of money on staff.
Why don't we look into finding, at least getting what it would cost to put the server back out at the road department?
Well, in my conversations with IT, it's not so much as having a server out at the road department as it is paying them to come back and give us a higher speed.
So wouldn't we be better off, I guess you have to get an estimate, but wouldn't we be better off getting the higher speed so the time spent is not wasted from staff?
Absolutely. They're running off of whatever was approved last year. I don't know what the board approved, but it's not adequate. So I am working with IT on that.
Yeah, that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's not my expertise, and just need the best solution for the best price. And just looking at the future, $725 a month in the near future, we're not going to be able to afford that. And so, and if they're going to double that, so we get 50 megabytes, these are costs that
Well, your cost is really more if you think about it, because you've got your staff time.
Oh,
that's wasted.
absolutely. We're not.
And that's what really costs.
We're not being efficient and effective in our duties. Absolutely. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I had more stuff, but that was kind of sidetracked.
I just have one little question. Are you brushing along the sides of the roads this year, or?
Absolutely. We actually were way behind in brush cutting.
Oh, are you? Because of the storms?
Well, because of the FEMA storm events, but also too, fire season came early, so we do not mow in fire season because our machinery is really heavy, and the blades could start a spark and cause a forest fire. So we shut down fire season, and fire season just ended.
So you're going to be out doing that?
We're mowing, and our South County was the worst, and we took care of that right away. And there's some issues at the Port Orford dump that County Council needed us to address, and so we mobilized in there on Monday, and we're going to be in there for about a week and a half, 2 weeks more, and we should have that wrapped up for him. But we're also looking at, while we're mobilized up north, the city of Port Orford requested if they could use us to do some mowing for them, so we're looking at that here now.
Yeah,
as
as long as
well.
they pay us, no problem.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnes, you had a comment on 7J, the consent agenda?
Thank you. If I might, with all the, I read this and I read the package information that came with it, and I'm just wondering how, with all the kerfluffle going on with CCH right now, this is a grant to modernize something medicine. I'm wondering if you should be expanding our relationship with them, given the issues that we're having right now. That's all I wanted to ask.
Ms. Mulder?
I just want to comment on that. So I had asked the same question, and I asked the state. And what happened was the state had promised them this money contractually back in spring, but the money didn't come through. So this is basically accepting the money for work that they have been doing and that they have already budgeted for.
All right, so let's move on now to 7, the consent agenda. Did you want to, well, I guess no, we'll discuss that later, and we'll just put it back on the consent agenda after discussion for next meeting. So 7, consent agenda. A, to approve minutes for the business meeting September 25th, 2019. B, to approve minutes business meeting October 2nd, 2019. C, to approve the minutes for the special meeting of October 10th, 2019. We've pulled D for discussion. E, approve 2019 Central County Paving Project Change Order Number 2, signature authority to our Roadmaster Richard Christensen. F, approve 6's River Fishing Access Certification, notice of determination from the assessor. G, approve Building Inspector 2 job description. H and I have been pulled. J, approve amendment to current contract 159808 CCH. And K, appoint Plan Commission member to North County position. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, next we're going to move to 8, discussion items. A's, ordinance second reading, creation of Suicide Awareness and Prevention Council. I have a public comment from Mr. Clay.
For the record, my name is Gordon Clay from Brookings, Oregon. I want to thank Julie Smetzer and the 3 commissioners for their support in acknowledging the establishment of a county council to see that it is possible to reduce the number of suicides and attempts, the high level of stress, anxiety, and depression in our county, and its contribution to our high suicide and suicide attempt rates, especially suicides of our veterans and the attempts by our county's students. However, that is the easy part if this is approved as a second reading. And that brings in a huge challenge to find 17 qualified citizens who have the knowledge, passion, determination, and drive backed by lived experience joined together to develop and recommend to agencies that serve within the county and to the public plans and tools to provide for and influence the awareness and prevention of suicide in the Curry County, including the study of preventing suicide, plans for the prevention of suicide, and informing agencies and the general public of resources and plans to bring awareness to suicides in the county. My hope is to find 17 individuals who have the emotional desire to do what it takes to, 1, learn why our suicide rates continue to rise, what has been missing or ignored, 2, find evidence-based solutions to correct the shortcomings, 3, in the absence of such programs, develop what is decided to be a necessary solution, and 4, encourage the implementation of those strategies as soon as possible. The county shall be comprised of 17 members, each serving a 4-year term, except for the youth advisor, who shall serve 1 term. Membership shall include representatives from the following: law enforcement officer, first responder, i.e. EMT or fire, medical, a doctor, nurse, hospital member, or community care organization member, social worker, therapist, counselor, or peer support trained in suicidality, youth education, substance abuse recovery, elder services, juvenile programming, veterans programming or services, a city mayor or administrator, tribal community, faith-based community, youth ambassador, media, and 3 lay people. Watch for an ad in our local newspapers and submit your application sooner than later. In the meantime, go to one of the 160 locations in Curry and Del Norte County to pick up an ROUOK wallet card, keep it in your wallet, and learn the warning signs. If you're going to solve this issue, it's going to take the village to come together and everyone doing their part to save lives of our citizens. And one comment about the earlier report from Curry Health is, will anything that they are doing in this plan improve the situation of services for mental health, suicide cases? Because I didn't hear anything on that. And we've got, as you know, a major problem. If we have anybody in crisis, it can't be served here in Curry County. They have that 4-hour, 3-hour drive up to Coos Bay or over to Medford. So that I'd like that considered as, what are they doing there? Is this going to be part of that magnificent plan to give services to South County?
I think she said in her presentation that they were looking to increase the services, but first they wanted to see where their budget was before they promised anything to the county.
In mental health?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, next
Is it approved?
what's that?
The second reading.
Well, that's what we're going to do. So
I'm sorry.
next we're going to go to 8A, the second reading ordinance, creation of Suicide Awareness and Prevention Council. Ms. Schmelzer.
So, as you're aware, this is the second reading. If the board approves this, it will become effective in 90 days. We will begin advertising the positions if approved, so that when the 90 days approaches, we can actually have the committee meet or the council meet and then begin working on this issue.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I
Move, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, we've already dealt with B, so
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Boyce?
It'll wait. Thank you, Mr. Clay. I just want to say thank you.
8, we've already dealt with 8B, so we're going to move on to 8C, Board of Commissioner meeting dates, October 16th of 19 to December of 20. Ms. Schmelzer?
Okay, so when we look at some of our contracts, such as with Brant Media, we need to give them a schedule of our meeting dates. It's also important for people trying to schedule their quarterly reports, or some agencies like the Watershed Council that wants to share information with us every year. So we try to get a set schedule that we can all follow, so we can all make our calendars consistent with that. I know in the beginning of the year we set a schedule and then we've changed it a couple times. So hoping that we're all happy with the schedule we're on next year. This proposed schedule right here would follow what we're doing now. But do you want to discuss it and see if we can get something approved?
Yeah, I just have one question on the night meetings. I think our original agreement was to rotate between Brookings, Port Orford, and Gold Beach, those night meetings, and I just see the rotation between Brookings and Port Orford. So I don't know whether the commission wants to consider doing a 3-month rotation rather than every other month.
That's a really good point, and you're right, we're not giving the people in Gold Beach the opportunity to attend a night meeting, so that is something we should look at.
And not only that, I think you could save on the video equipment situation.
Right. Right, it does cost us $385 for the remote meetings, to film those remote meetings, so it's something to think about. I think that's a great idea, and I think that we can incorporate that in there if we can just perhaps agree to this, including that Gold Beach rotation.
Yeah, and that would be easy just to fit that in,
Sure.
I would think.
And those meetings would be held here.
Mhm.
Right.
Commissioner Boyce?
I think we got a real good system here, and the Gold Beach people tend to have the greatest advantage and convenience because of being centrally located and the county seat. So for right now, at least for the first 2, 3, 4 months, I would suggest we leave it exactly like we have it. And we're also in somewhat of a probationary period here to make sure we get the attendance. We'll know more after the 29th meeting. Excuse me, is that the right one? The last meeting of this month in Brookings. So we're hoping for a better turnout there. But right now, I would recommend the board leave this as is. And plus the Gold Beach people, they can travel. The South County and North County people travel all the time if they need to get to an evening meeting. That's all I have.
Well, we have a motion?
I'll move, Mr. Chair. Accept the schedule, at least on a preliminary basis, for 2020.
Do I have a second? I'll second that. Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
I'm going to say no because of the rotation.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried 2-1.
And what I'd like to say, Ms. Schmelzer, is, maybe in the spring we can look into that. But for right now, let's leave it the way it is. We can always make a change and get it corrected.
Well, I think when it comes to the night meetings, we're
They're
asking...
not starting up until the spring anyway.
Right.
Right, they're not starting up to the spring, but at least we can let Brookings and Port Orford know the schedule so that what we want to do is let them know so they can get it on their calendar. By not, it sounds like what we want to do is revisit it, which doesn't help them with their schedule. They can't get it on the books right now if we're saying, this is what it is during winter, but we're going to revisit it in spring. They already know we're not there in winter. The goal is to see, should they be reserving it for those summer months. If we do add Gold Beach in there, that is going to change that schedule. So we're okay with moving forward with this, but basically what we have to do is tell those two communities, just wait, we don't really have a schedule for you yet.
Now I'm confused. Did we not just approve this schedule as is for 2020? At least
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next we're going to discuss what we made from 7D to 8D, which is to approve the Fourth Amendment of Communications Facility Lease on AT&T use of Curry County Agnes Communication Tower Site, Roadmaster. Ms. Gold, you asked to pull this from the consent agenda, so you have the floor, ma'am.
Okay, my reason for pulling it was that I think we need to look long-term about replacing the towers, and a portion of that money, that lease money, needs to go into replacement fees, or we need to increase the cost of the rental. That was my concern.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's possible.
Yeah, I'm just thinking down the road, you don't want to have another huge surprise of $860,000.
We're way beyond that right now. But
This meeting was going really good.
yeah, no, towers is a big discussion, but we're millions behind in towers.
Okay, well, I just wanted to put that out.
We're talking $800 a month here, and basically, Day Wireless manages our towers and our repairs, and I was contacted by a representative of AT&T to renegotiate their deal. And so I just turned it over to Bethany Davidson with Day Wireless, and she renegotiated it. They wanted to add a second dish to the tower. It comes out to $800 a month extra, so, which In turn, Day Wireless gets 30% of that $800. So our new annual fee from AT&T will be right around $41,000 is what we get for AT&T being on Agnes. And but the thing is, we're really going with towers too. Is that's extra income coming in. That's going to help. But for years and years, towers was paid with Title III funds. Now those funds are all gone, and this year they had to pay out of the general fund that $35,000 that were missing from Title III. So this will help a little bit with that. But Day Wireless's fees are going way up too. They used to be like $39,000 a year. Now they're $50,000 a year because there's more and more repairs and calls to the towers, and so it's just a drop in the bucket. This
Even though they're new, we're having more repairs and stuff?
Well, they're not, the new ones aren't up yet. The new
No, I
ones
know
will go
that,
up
but-
This month, but I have a question. They're charging 30%, is that for maintenance on the towers?
No, 30% for
Negotiating the contract?
Yeah, and maintaining the contract with AT&T.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
That's something we need to look at. That looks like usury to me.
Well, the previous roadmaster, it used to be 50%, 50-50, and the previous roadmaster, Doug Robbins, negotiated it down to 30%.
Well, let me negotiate the next one, because that
Okay.
30% to me is to manage the contract.
I'm not 100% if that's all of what it is, but it sounds like that's what
Can I get a
it is.
full description of what they get
Sure.
30% for? I would appreciate that if you'd email that to
I
me.
can do that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
While Rich is still here, I do want to just note that Rich did submit something for the agenda. It came in after we had already posted the
Right.
agenda. We didn't feel we should amend the agenda because it's really something the board had already discussed and talked about, and it was just verifying or approving the contract or the document for it. So because I forgot to also put it on when we did the amend agenda, I want to bring it up under other, but since Rich is here, I'm just wondering if we could do that right now. So
Absolutely.
Okay, so what we have is, it's a FEMA Langlois Mountain Road Slip Project and your partnership with, through the road department. And basically, on April 6, 2019, the road slipped out approximately 2 feet, making it a FEMA eligible event to repair and perform mitigation to fix this section of the county road. The task order cost is not to exceed $38,200, in which FEMA will cover 75% of the cost, and the road department maximum cost of $25,000 would be $9,550. So JJ did give you a copy of this. Rich is asking that you approve task order number 12 and the professional services contract to have that work done.
I'll make that motion.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
So on this 7D that we took off of the consent agenda, can we make an approval on that as well?
I'm sorry. Yes.
So also move that we include now 7D on the consent agenda for approval. Do I have a
I think
second?
we already approved the consent agenda, so wouldn't this just
We
be a
have to do it
separate item?
separate.
Well, I didn't read it off on the consent agenda, though.
I know, but we approved the consent agenda as amended.
Right.
So then let's just approve this separately.
Well, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. You didn't say it like that, but that's fine. So I would move that we approve the AT&T contract.
I'll second that. Further discussion?
Ready to vote, Mr. Chair.
Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
AT&T is approved unanimously.
All right. Now, before we go to director's report, I would like to give an opportunity for council to communicate some information to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Had an issue come up with TLT tax revenues and the direction for where the revenues go. If you recall, we adopted a TLT ordinance. The voters voted for it, and it the county puts 70% to, 70% to, actually, this is about marijuana revenues, if I'm not mistaken. We adopted a marijuana tax, and the marijuana tax had 2% or 3% of sales revenues come to the county general fund, and it came up that the idea was that should go to the sheriff. So then we amended the county ordinance to say it will go to the sheriff, and that ordinance amendment had an effective date. And so the treasurer has received marijuana tax revenues and doesn't know where to put it because some of the revenues are before we did the amendment, and then other revenues are after we did the amendment. And what we need clarification from the board on is what was the intent of the amendment? Was it to make the amendment effective to all marijuana tax revenues that we receive since the time of imposing the tax would go to the sheriff or not? And so we're just looking, we've heard that it was to have all revenues since the time of adopting the ordinance, that the amendment essentially would be retroactive, notwithstanding its effective date of a month or two ago. And so it's basically like 6 months or half a year, 3/4 of a year worth of marijuana tax revenues that the treasurer just needs direction on where to put it.
It was my understanding that it would go to the sheriff's department
All of them
from day
retroactive?
one. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Wait, for this budget, starting with, because the marijuana money that we would receive up to July 1st was already budgeted last year, my understanding was anything after July 1st would go to the
Okay.
sheriff.
Yeah, so we're just looking for clarification. There's a lot of different pieces now. Director Schmelzer, we get two types of marijuana revenues. One is from the state, and one because we opted in, and one, we didn't preclude any marijuana, so we get revenues from the state. And so the treasurer receives revenues from both the state and then from our own tax that the state collects for us. So this would apply to both of those. They would just go to the sheriff, or
No, the order was written that it would just be the 3%
Our
tax
local.
on the unincorporated,
Okay,
the local
good.
tax.
All right, thank you. So
Can I
that's
ask you a question?
okay.
How much money are we talking? Oh,
No,
you
I
can't
don't
say?
really know. I'm not prepared to answer that question. I'm not the money answer guy, so.
Okay. I was
Commissioner
just
Boyce?
curious.
I do have.
It sounds like the keyword was retroactive. That's the decision we're going to make later.
Yes. No, today. If you just give us direction today, that's all we're looking for.
It's retroactive to the beginning of the budget cycle for
Yeah.
2019-20.
Yep.
So July 1st.
July 1st.
And that would be county taxes only.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I'm ready to make a motion that we go, again, the key word is retroactive, back to the sheriff's department and clarify this for the treasurer, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pesh.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, at this time, we'll go to number 9, our director's report. Ms. Schmelzer.
Okay, so a couple things to update you on. One is we had looked at a housing coordinator job description, and as you're aware, I made a comment that I didn't think we should have that unless we could have that paid for with grant funds. And the board just wanted to put it on hold for a while. I have had, Commissioner Boyce and I have talked a little bit about the idea of what it would look like to actually contract for that position. And by contracting, we'd actually be able to get the position for less. So it would also require less grant money. We have been in contact with somebody that does do this for a living, and they're actually going to just give us a rough idea what that would cost. So I'll share that information with you when we have that. The properties that we agreed to sell to adjacent landowners earlier in the year, we had one in June and then 2 in August that we discussed. They were sent the letters asking them to pay for the application fee so we could get those moving forward to the next step, which would be to advertise it in the paper. I think the board needs to revisit the office hours. We discussed this earlier this year, and it was put on hold to wait until the assessor's office could get more staff. We are having issues. Again, last Friday we had somebody very upset come downstairs because there was nobody down there. So I think the board, if they're okay with it, put it back on the agenda for next time to discuss have an office, standard office hours for all county offices of 8 to 5, or 8 to 4:30, whatever the board chooses, Monday through Friday. And of course, offices still have the ability to flex their time, where if some people work 10-hour days, they could do the Monday through Thursday, and some would do Tuesday through Friday. But the main goal is to actually have somebody in each office available to the public from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So I see some heads shake on that one, so I'm going to bring that back. Just want to give you an example of, I guess, one of the reasons why we look at these bills when they come in. Commissioner Pash has been very diligent about reviewing them in detail to see what we're being charged for. We had an incident yesterday, as a matter of fact, where normally we pay about $200 for a service, and because we didn't have a credit, this employee didn't have a credit card. One of our coordinators didn't have a credit card. We had to use a billing approach, and the bill, which meant because he had to go to a different vendor. I'm sorry, he didn't have a credit card, couldn't pay for it in the field, so I had to go with a vendor that would allow to have us billed. That vendor charged us about $1,500 for what we normally would get for a $200 service. That vendor was willing to give us a 20% discount, which got it down to around almost $1,300. Commissioner Pash got that down to about $750 yesterday. But it goes to show, I think, several things. Why we need to look at these in detail, why we need to do some comparison shopping, and also why it is important to have your directors and your coordinators with credit cards, which we've addressed. We're actually going to be coming back at the next meeting with a list of those that need those credit cards. But as you know, we asked for that credit card policy in the beginning of the year, and it took a while to get it going. But in this particular instance, we could have saved quite a bit of money.
So have you talked to the directors about the situation, looking for the best buy type of thing?
Yes, they're aware that we're looking for the best. Charlene has done a pretty good job. She's looked at the printers. She's looked at different ways of cutting down those costs. She's still looking at them, but also asking employees to use Amazon so they get better prices when they're looking at items. But yeah, and I know Commissioner Pash has required that when they submit the bills that they actually have a detailed statement so we can see exactly what we're getting charged for. So DEQ, I just want to bring that up. The Department of Environmental Quality runs our on-site septic system program. And the person that services our area has resigned, so they have asked us if we want to have them reassign someone to our area, whether we want to take that in-house. Coos is in the same position, so perhaps we could partner with Coos. Commissioner Boyce is the liaison for community development, so he is reaching out to Coos to see what they are going to be doing on that. In the meantime, I've scheduled a meeting with DEQ to get more information about what's really involved with the program, with us taking it back. Would we be able to get funds for that? Are they available to give us training for the employees? Because with this position, you can't just take somebody off the street. They need to have usually a soil science background. They need to be trained in septic inspections and things of that nature. One thing looking at is some counties do offer what we call a golden handshake or a retirement program. So just doing a little investigation into that program, and I'll report back to you. And then we did actually have someone from one of our boards request that we do training on open meeting laws and basically what's involved in serving on a board or a commission for the county. So I'll be looking at that and trying to get something scheduled that we can actually offer
Actually,
them.
SDAO does those trainings for the special district?
The special districts. This one happens to not be a district. And the other thing is, we have a lot of boards and committees that serve on the county, and they don't get training when they're serving on that. So just a way to improve operations so they really understand what's involved. This one particular board is having some challenges where sometimes you have members that do know the rules and some that don't. So it kind of falls on some of the members to educate the others. So just looking at that.
Even when the members know it,
right,
sometimes they disregard it. So
Yeah, and I do think it's good at least to provide that information so we make sure we have educated people serving on our boards and committees.
And you might want to contact SDAO because they have someone that goes out and does these trainings. We may have to pay for it, but...
Sure. League of Oregon Cities, I know they might have some as well.
That's
so
true.
I'll do some looking into that. And that's all I have.
A lot of that can be done, though, through the ORSs. We could just print off the public meeting laws on the ORSs.
Can all be done in-house.
Yeah, and just do it right there. So
Yeah, it's...
if you, I understand what you're saying.
When, in my experience, it's more than just handing them the ORS. They actually have questions and they want somebody to answer them. And usually when you're doing trainings, there's scenarios that they learn.
It gets pretty boring
Maybe
just
we could
reading
have a
the
workshop with
ORSs.
council or something.
He would be my first choice.
Yeah, my experience is you basically have each board and commission schedule them a workshop, and you walk them through the public meeting and records. You first, when they get appointed, you usually have a booklet and I think we have these, but it's basically welcome to county government. Read this. And they read it. It's obviously Greek, and then you have a workshop and go through what they read. But it's pretty standard practice to have a really organized indoctrination training orientation for the newly elected and appointed members.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Chair Pash. Back to the basket of invoices. The one I did last Friday was about this tall. Takes a couple hours to do it right, and it is very informative, very, very educational. I make printouts of any questions I have. I got one call in to one department head, satisfied with the answer, and I have 2 or 3 on my desk that haven't been done since Friday, what I'm going to get to. So very beneficial to the program, and kudos to you for taking that time.
All right, next we'll have commission comments. Commissioner Gold, you're first.
I don't have a whole lot, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about SWAC and Beyond, all of the seminars that they've been having. Jeremy was part of the last one. They had a hiking seminar, and I guess there were 18 people that went on a hike last Saturday. So they're moving along as far as getting the public involved and coming to the campus, which I think is a good thing. Oh, also, I'm going to be having principal meetings. One scheduled for the 22nd, and that would be for the elementary principals, and then one scheduled for the 29th, and they're particularly interested in the CTE programs, getting students more prepared in the trades. So I think that's a good thing.
Okay. I don't have a lot either. I am fully on board for getting back to a 5-day work week. I think it's imperative that we make sure that when we have people looking to come to the county for resources and services that they expect us to have, that those offices be open. Again, I think staggering the days, as Ms. Schmelzer recommends, that way there is it's no additional cost to the county. But providing those services, as we've talked about, getting our building permit down to a 30-day process would be a wonderful thing for the county, expediting some of that. So having those offices open when somebody comes in on a Friday afternoon to drop off some plans, at least they can drop them off to the office. If the person that needs to see that isn't in the office, at least they have a place to deposit them so that when that person returns, they're there. Getting back to the billing thing that Ms. Schmelzer spoke about, I've had some comments from some employees and department heads about calling about different bills, calling different companies about their billings. It's not against the employee or the department head. It is more, I'm one of those people that I like to search for the best price. We have an internet that has Google, and we can price shop very easily. So I'm not contacting these companies a lot of times to complain about their invoicing. What I am asking them is, because of the relationships that we have with many of them, that they could offer us better pricing. I'm not picking on an employee or department head, so if you hear of one of us doing that, I would hope you wouldn't immediately think we're trying to pick on you. It is more to try and find dollars best spent for the county. I would like to take a moment to just applaud our staff, Ms. Schmelzer, and everyone that's, it's just a pleasure to work here. and have smiling faces when we come to work, people willing to sit and do the job. I'm very, very pleased to be involved with the group that is currently here, and appreciate that. Those are my comments. Council Huddle, do you have something?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We just had some folks join us. Commissioner Boyce, could I have permission to present these
Certainly.
folks before your speaking time?
Speaking of Goose County and Douglas County, by the way.
Well, you've heard of the Brookings Head Start, and so Art Chappett is a fellow in the checkered shirt here. He's with the State of Oregon Business Division, and maybe you could introduce yourself and tell you what's going on.
Yep. So my name is Arthur Chappett. I'm a project manager with Business Oregon, and I manage our community development block grant projects throughout the state. And you guys, of course, have one of those projects to build a head start for Mr. Lehman here down in Brookings. And this is a project has been a long time coming together, and the county's done a great job pulling it across the finish line here. And we're going to go down and inspect the building, or just take a look at the building later this afternoon. I understand that it's almost complete, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that. So congratulations to the county on successful completion, almost completion here of this block grant project, and the state really looks forward to working on the next one with you.
Thank you. And then Stu Woods is the architect. He kind of came to our rescue when the project went off the rails. Bottom line, we had too much impervious surface on prior versions, and we were going to involve drainage and NOAA and multiple hundreds of thousands of overruns. We had to just restart back to the drawing board. Stu got us a good project, and it's been going really well. You have seen some of his reports on the project, at least one of them I presented to the board. He does photographs, he does all kinds of things in his reports. Tracy Loomis is with CCD. She's been our contract grant administrator, tracking all the payments and whatnot. And again, Mike Lehman is our partner with Orca. And if you recall, I showed some of you a $58,000 check that Mike's organization put into this contract. So it's really been a partnership. When the project's all said and done, we will transfer over the building to Mike to have for his needs. So, and then Sherilyn Harvey, you just saw her, and she's our part of keeping track of the expenses on this thing, her and Sina and the rest of the finance department.
So we're keeping on budget,
Yes, and then,
pretty much.
well, I guess I can tell him, Commissioner Pash, I worked with Commissioner Pash to put a request to the city of Brookings. There was a $7,000 water hookup utility bill that the city of Brookings sent to us, and we outlined all the benefits of the project, the kind of money that it's put into the community, like was one of the purposes of doing this. And our hope is that the city of Brookings will see the benefits of contributing that $7,000 fee. And then I also have been trying to get fill dirt for the backyard playground. A fellow named Ted Freeman, he says he wants to go down and visit the site and talk about it. So he's quite a good asset to the community. He's on our planning commission. So a lot of people out there looking to help out here, Mike. So anyhow, I'm trying to just keep it going as well. So you might have something to say.
When there was an open mic, Mike Lehman, Ringo Community Action is an open mic, and Commissioner Boyce doesn't have a microphone. I always feel like it's a good opportunity to say something. But really, this project would not exist without Curry County. It was on the deathbed 3 times. It's $1 million commitment or investment in Curry County. It's $1 million that really guarantees we keep a Head Start facility in Brookings. Without the facility, we are always shopping. We move buildings all the time, and without that facility, we couldn't guarantee that we'd be down there forever. This locks us in down there, and that's where we want to be. It's really, a special thank out to John Huddle. He's been instrumental in carrying this thing along, and we're on budget. I'll be very honest with you. We have Orca has put somewhere close to $100,000 out of funds we were not expecting to put into the project. It's that important to us. It's really important to the kids in the Brookings area to have a nice building. And it's going to be a spectacular building. And we'll have some invites to all of you. Special thanks to Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner Gold. You guys signed on when it looked very, very dicey. And I just want to appreciate your commitment.
It was before your time, Commissioner.
No, that's fine.
No disrespect to you, but it was.
I understand.
I just have to say that I changed my vote. I was coming in planning to vote no. that day before your comments, so.
Oh, and I was able to persuade you, right?
No, that wasn't it. It was,
All right.
I was looking
Thank
at
you,
law.
thank you for popping in, and I'll circle back and visit with you guys soon.
Thanks so much. All right, I have a couple of more comments that I wanted to make. First of all, I wanted to let everyone know that we are continuing conversations about Curry Community Health and the state and what we are going to be left with here, the uphill battle that we face on this. Ms. Schmelzer has done some great work on this. She's got a list of what was transferred to them, what the county exactly gave to them when for their inception, and we are moving forward with this because we are up against a lot of time constraints. I also wanted to give to the other commissioners. I received this letter. It is for the Community Renewable Energy Association, and it's an annual membership, I guess, to them, and if we wanted to remain involved in this or not.
How much?
It's $250 a year for membership.
What do we get out of it?
I guess I can make a copy of the letter for you, and we can put it on the consent agenda for next meeting if you'd like to. That's be up to you. You both, yes, Commissioner Boyce. Actually, I'm done, so you can lead in.
Thank you. In my commissioner's report, I'll quickly explain why I think that might be something we will be interested in, not necessarily right away, but that is a good organization. I follow it as much as I can. Appreciate Mr. Barnes' comments earlier today about reaching out to the other counties. Of the 5 counties we're close to, first of all, Douglas County, 95% of their people are within 10 miles of Interstate 5. Same thing as Jackson County. The other thing I want to remind the public why I think it's so important to work with the other commissioners. If you take, for example, the work we're doing on the rogue fisheries issue, the rogue basin counties, certainly we're trying to do everything we can to get Jackson County involved. Josephine County, of course, has been very supportive. I'm probably closer to, and this has been 2.5 years, because they're long-term commissioners in Coos County, but I'm probably closer to them than I am any of them, even Douglas County, where I have a certain relative. But I had Commissioner Cribbins calling 3 different issues. Yesterday we talked for about 20-25 minutes. Last week I talked to Commissioner Sweet, who, as I've said in the past, I have tremendous respect for it. He called early in the morning. We talked for about an hour. So we have a lot of, I appreciate the isolation of Curry County and uniqueness compared to the other counties, but we also, of course, needless to say, have a lot of similar issues. Coos County kindly sent down their retired health and wellness representative that was with us last week or 10 days ago, and we're making some progress there. Director Smelzer, I'm sorry, mentioned the DEQ. We're working very close with them. If it's a good position to put the county in to co-work with them on a housing coordinator, and there's other issues. So I just want the public to know that those relationships, I agree with Mr. Barnes, are critical, and I have devoted a tremendous amount of time during my almost 3 years as commissioner to work towards what will down the road be a mutually beneficial. Right now it's mostly Curry County that's benefiting, but just some excellent people up there. Quickly, dispatch, the county and Brookings combined with, I believe it was 35,000, Portland State University, and that's kind of I don't want to say died for lack of interest, but I'm not going to let that go just yet. I want to work with Brookings, and there's a lot of money. There's a lot of different figures that have been promoted out there, but a lot of money that could be saved. Plus, there's a very logical aspect of that with all the services that the county provides for the cities, as we all well know. I'm also working on offshore wind power, which the acronym is CREA, C-R-E-A. Curry County has the best winds in the western part of the United States, both south in the winter and north winds coming during the spring and the summer. It looks initially, with the people I'm working with in Coos County and somewhat too throughout the state, that there's not an environmental issue here. Also in my work with the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association, with the wonderful winds that we have and the the demand for power right now, certainly the great interest in renewable energy. This is something I hope that will have some merit. I can't say that for sure at this point, but I'll be reporting to the board now and then again. I have a meeting with all the local fire chiefs tonight, and I'm going to be giving a short presentation on why I think there is valid reasons to consider having one fire department in Curry County. Different precincts, certainly with Port Orford, Gold Beach, Harbor, and obviously Brookings, but there's some money to be saved. There's some way to get national attention. Sometimes our 14 rural fire departments plus the cities, for a total of 17, they're the first ones with the fires that can go to, as you know, catastrophic fires. So I think there's ways to find some good savings there. Thanks to Director Schmelzer. She kindly and recently reminded me earlier this week that today is World Food Day. And that's something that was internationally established in 1945 because then and now as well, concern for food security and overcoming potential food insecurity. So we have a lot of little advantages in our county. We have OSU Extension Agency that does a lot of work for our citizens. That's basically free. Master gardeners. We have food co-ops. We have victory gardens, community gardens. We have, there's just ways that we could work with our youth to teach them how to grow food, how to plan, how to put food away. Sometimes that's becoming a lost art. My mom cans just for fun, and the boxes get real heavy when she needs them moved on a Saturday afternoon. I have a local restaurant owner here that would love to just take kids into a supermarket and other interested folks and just simply show them how you can save money by shopping wisely. He's willing to help and contribute in that way. Also getting back to the basics, but then, the natural disasters that we've had 2011 through 2014, the sinkhole, the tsunami, 2 catastrophic fires, highway collapse, an April flood, which is almost unheard of historically in Curry County. Once in a while early March, but very seldom in April. So I think that you saw the work that EMC Director, Coordinator Jeremy Dumeyer is doing. We're doing everything we can to prepare the citizens, prepare the county. We know additional natural disasters are coming. We've had 7 in the last 8 years. So I just want the board to know that before this is the Thanksgiving season, so this year Thanksgiving is on the 28th. The 20th or perhaps the 27th, the day before Thanksgiving, we have a Wednesday meeting. I'm going to ask for a group to come in. Some of the people I mentioned, OSU, the Master Gardeners, et cetera, that could just give quick 3 or 4 minute presentations and just get the information out there to the public. And I hope it'll evolve into an annual meeting, which will be June. This year, June 7th, is the World Food Safety Day. Safety is an interesting word, but I think I understand the concept behind that. I think that in a rural area like this, we have some advantages, but we also have some disadvantages, and I think it could eventually evolve into helping other rural areas. So more on that later, and that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, so at this time, we are going to break for lunch and recess this meeting, and when we come back from our lunch at 1 o'clock, we will be going into executive session per ORS 1926602 to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent. ORS 1926602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. 1926602F to consider information or records exempt from public law records. And ORS 1926602H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed.
Just when you're done.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Clay has been sitting here all day. I just wanted to extend a really good thank you to him. The work he's been doing is just just incredible, and I just want to extend gratitude, and I know the board feels that way. Gordon, thank you again for being here today and keeping us on our toes with this the very important issues that you bring before the board and the county. Thank you very much. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so at this time, we are going to recess. We will reconvene after executive session. October 16th, 2 p.m. joint workshop meeting with the Port of Brookings Harbor and the Curry County Commissioners. I'd like to start the meeting, if we could, by everyone just kind of introducing yourself for the record.
Port Commissioner.
Ken Range, Port Commissioner.
Joe Spear, Port Commissioner.
Sharon Hartdown, Port Commissioner.
All right. And then we have Julie Schmelzer, of course, Commissioner Boyce, myself, Commissioner Pash, Commissioner Gold, Council Huddle, and JG, our right hand.
Oh, yeah.
Are the microphones on? Are those mics on? And then, yeah, on the ends, if you wouldn't mind putting the lapel mics on so that we can hear you and make sure that each unit is on for the record. Just speak into it. Do a test on it.
Switch on the top.
Yes.
That's good. There you go.
We can hear each other.
What's that?
We were just bragging about our program.
Here he comes. Turn that one back on again.
Yours is fine. Is that yours?
Yes.
Richard went off.
We thought he was going to leave.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started, and we'll get a new mic here in a second. Ms. Schmelzer, did you want to start the meeting?
Sure.
Check.
Gary and his staff had contacted me to ask if we would be interested in having a joint meeting with the Port Commission, and I said certainly we would. So we've got it scheduled. My understanding is there were two important items they wanted to discuss. One was sedimentation and economic development, but leave it open to discuss other things as well, so we can start building a relationship whereby we can meet quarterly perhaps, just to continue the dialogue and see how we can help you and basically how we can improve things for the county.
Thank you.
All right, so why don't, if you'd like to, maybe your board talk about a little bit about what you're here for and what you'd like to talk with us about, and we've got our roadmaster, Richard Christensen, here as well.
What I'd like to do, Chair, is have Gary start the meeting out for us. Gary and Travis, please let them start out, and then the commission can kick in.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind, then give them one of the mics, and you can go to the guys near the podium, because everything, of course, has to be recorded. One of the big mics here would be great. Just, yeah, you can take it right out of the holder. There you go.
I think what you're going to find, Sheriff Chris, is he'll get it initiated, and then the board will have questions for you.
Perfect.
All right.
There we go.
Can you hear me? Got the meeting packet here. Okay, is this thing working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you for meeting today, all the commissioners. So the first item that we have here is the county culverts entering the port property. I provided pictures of I believe it's 4 different areas. 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 areas. So on the first page, the most concern we have is our boatyard 84-inch culvert, which is, as I understand, it's a county easement pipe that's coming into our basin. And you can see the pictures on the right-hand side of the debris coming into the port. This culvert here, we actually have dredged several times in the past several years. That's the most recent picture of what it looks like now. We took a picture inside of a manhole. There's debris inside the pipe. Then the third picture on the right-hand side, on the lower side, is the sediment basin that actually the county digs out on a regular basis. You can see inside it's about half full of debris that's leading towards the port. So there's quite a bit of material inside that pipe.
So is more debris and sediment coming down as a result of the Checo Bar fire? I remember you coming and talking about that a little bit.
So these culverts here have nothing to do with Checo Bar fire.
Okay.
These are coming from the harbor and 101 side of the area, the east side of Harbor.
Real quick though, because we're about ready to have some, rain events for the winter season, does the additional rain that pushes through this culvert in the winter help push some of that sediment back out and then it slowly gathers back in there during the year, or is it a one-time thing?
It's a one-time thing at every storm. More material comes down the hill and enters the pipe and then enters the port.
I misspoke. I meant a continual thing.
Yeah, it's continual thing.
It keeps adding to. Is that what's happening?
So one storm won't help the additional cubic feet per minute won't help push it out? Or?
I don't know if anybody's figured out where all this material is coming from. There's a lot of material coming down. It's been happening over the years. When I first showed up in 2015, we dredged out the area. And 2 years later, 2017, we dredged out 3,000 cubic yards. And here's the pile again. So it's a continuous, for this spot, it's continuous.
Can I ask, we can kind of take these step by step. Roadmaster, are you familiar with this? I mean, you can stay up there. I'm just wondering, this is something that he says that you've dredged already to help clean up some of this, or help clean out the front of it, excavated it. Do we know where all this is coming from?
Not exactly, but it's Harbor Hills most likely. And I started working on this project when I first started working here about 1.5 years ago. And I've been working with Travis and Gary since then. And been trying to identify all the issues. There's been flooding down there for like 30 years or more historically. And so my engineering team asked me if I would help with that. I said, sure. So I go, let's see the maps. Well, we don't have any maps. And so we started a mapping project to figure out where everything's going down there. And then I looked into a project that the city of Brookings and the county partnered in. It was this 2007 HEE storm surface water facility plan. And Brookings put a lot of information of deficiencies on their side of the river in this plan. But the county and the port didn't put any information in it. It's pretty much everything down there is hunky-dory. But these issues have been happening like for 30 years, so it wasn't put into this plan. So I found many deficiencies, like the one Gary's talking about. And what really needs to happen is this. I reached out to Brookings Planning Department. They didn't give me any feedback that I want to update this plan if they want to partner on it. No feedback. But what I really suggest is that the port and the county partner up and update the Harbor Hills and the port part of this plan to identify all these deficiencies, find out where all this material is coming from. And once we identify them and we have them in the plan and it's engineered, we can work together to pursue funding to make these repairs. And there's so many deficiencies out there. And like the one that Gary's talking about is a sedimentation basin on the Tuttle Creek Basin that the county got easements from the port to put in this 84-inch culvert with this large detention basin. I believe it was sized for a 25-year rain event. Well, we've been having 50-year rain events, and so all this water comes down off Harbor Hills through this sedimentation basin, and they'll fill it up in one event. And, Travis will call me and go, hey, Rich, this thing's full. We'll go dig it out. And we typically have always dug it out twice a year. And so now I've made a special project number just for it so we could track when we clean it out. And but if it's designed for a 25-year rain event and you have all the sediment coming down and you have 50-year rain events, it's not going to have the capacity for that. And it's going to enter the harbor. And that's what I see happening there. So, that could be something that would be an update of this facility plan, that there needs to be a second basin maybe put in. And I've talked with Travis and Gary about that. But this is just one of several storm drain creeks that enter into port. The port, before the port was there was creeks there, and it was just all full of gravel. Well, all the gravel on the mountains are always going to go to the port. And so a lot of these pipes were installed without permits probably, and not sized for 25-year rain events. They were sized for whatever people had at the time when they put them in. And the county doesn't have any easements crossing the port that we can find except for the one for Tuttle Creek. There's like 5 other major pipes that cross that have other deficiencies that we're trying to map out. And I've been trying to get that done, but I ran into some problems with DEQ, and we're trying to get things TV'd and a contractor come in here and work with the port, but just haven't been able to put it together.
Okay. Commissioner Gold?
So I have a question. If you find out that it's coming from Harbor Hills, could those residents up in that area, or how could we get funding to take care of the problem?
I think you could find all the deficiencies, and then if they're on private property, have the property owner abate them and have the property owners fix them. And what City of Brookings has done in the past when I worked there, if a property owner brought up their storm drain to a city standard, that the city, and put it in a city standard easement, the city would, they could take it to the council for having it taken into the city inventory. And so I've been trying to use that same process here. It really worked well with the City of Brookings. And so what I was trying to talking with Gary and Travis about is maybe we could put something together where we could work together, do a facility plan. We each pay for our own sections. We each pay for our own cleaning. We identify all the issues, and we work together chasing funding, because if we work together, we have more power, and we can have a better grant application. And once the pipes are brought up to a county standard with sedimentations that would protect the port, I would suggest that the county take those on and assume the responsibility of those pipes in sedimentation basins and easements, because we have the facilities and the equipment to do that. We have excavators, we have dump trucks, where we can go in there after every storm event, muck them out, and at low cost, where right now it's extremely high cost, all this material coming off the mountain, Harbor Hills, going through private culverts, state highway culverts, then private culverts under the county road, which we only have a short piece, and then through the port, it's a mess.
Commissioner Boyce, did you?
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Dillinger, did you have a report? Because if you do, I'd like to hear that report from beginning to end before we bring this into discussion. I think that's the best interest of our time, Mr. Chair. I know that I've never heard Harbor Hills before. You know, I've wanted to really make the logical, come to the logical conclusion that's come from the Checo Bar fire, especially after last winter when you got, instead of 4,000 tons, you got 40,000 tons. So do you have a 5 or 10 minute report you wanted to make here? Because that's who I want to hear from right now.
Commissioner Gold?
I just have one quick question before you quit, Rich. I think what we need to do is get to the heart of the problem and try to fix the reason for this happening. And so do we have any standards for the culverts up in Harbor Hills for private and all of that, so that we wouldn't have this problem continuously? You have to get to the root of the problem if you're going to solve it.
I agree. I think this document would also be a planning tool to help with development, with their standards for retaining water when they're developing. And a lot of that development up there has been without maybe following a standard through planning to limit development in their water coming off the hill. I don't know.
So I think that's going to be up to the county to set up those standards.
Yes, and that could be all done in this facility plan.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and continue then.
I don't really have a report per se, but I can give you an update as to what we're dealing with FEMA and Checo Bar fire impact of the port. So in 2017, we had an engineer do a survey of our basins. So we have a baseline, and that was just shortly after the Checo Bar fire. And then he did another report roughly 2 years later, in July of this year, and found that we had 40,000 cubic yards in that 2-year period. The rain events happened in 2018 wasn't as significant as they were in 2019. So we kind of figured 2019 was probably the bigger event, bringing in the sediment. So So I'm dealing with FEMA right now to try to dredge out 40,000 cubic yards. That includes the material coming out of these culverts as well. So we believe majority of the material is coming from Jekyll Bar Fire. So every time we have probably large rain events, we're going to have large amounts of sediment come down and impact the port. So, of course, this meeting here, we're talking about the culverts. We do have, like I said, the 84-inch is a pretty significant culvert that's, you can see the large material in our basins. But another culvert on page, if you flip the page, I don't have these page numbers numbered, unfortunately, but on 36-inch culvert that's at the retail parking lot. So that culvert is a 36-inch, and it's at the beginning it's half full. This culvert, we're actually having problems when we have a large rain event that fills up and actually overflows onto the road, which enters our main retail entrance. And then all the water shoots across the port property and it enters a private property. So we have issues there, and right now, if it's half full, it's only half capacity. So if it's cleaned out, it may handle all the water. It may not be a private issue. So, and also this same pipeline is actually, or culvert is actually depositing a lot of material in our basin 1 as well, which you can see in pictures on the very top there. So, I don't know if that answered your question about
it's all public to know, and I want to make sure we're on the same page. And I think in terms of priority and issues and damage to the port, I mean, we had the burden of proof on us, I believe, to prove that it's coming from the Jekyll Bar Fire.
Right.
And, we got our 480,000, whatever, to study the Rogue Basin project. We've been trying to figure out a way to maneuver some of that funds to the other 2 Curry County ports, in particular Brookings Harbor. And so just determining that is the best way, and if that needs to be developed in a plan between the county and the port, the cities, absolutely that's the direction I presume we would want to go. But I assume that a good portion of the day would be discussing this issue and the sheer amount, and the pictures are very helpful. Yeah, I took a picture 2 weeks ago on that west side, and no boats parked on that series of docks, and it's heartbreaking. So I know that the damage it's doing to all of your efforts in your board. So yes, you answer my question, and that helps. And when you can just visualize 10 times the amount of normal aggregate that's coming down that river on an average year, I mean, that is staggering, and we need to get on the rooftops and shout it out, I think.
Right.
And I'm promoting that around the state as best I can. Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have anything further?
No, I don't think so, unless my board has any questions.
Well, yeah, that's what we're going to have next. I think Roy said he wanted to have the board then address us. So
I'd like to ask Gary to tell the county commissioner board what DEQ told the port management team about cleaning those culverts out, or if nothing goes in the basin out of those culverts.
Might be better from the roadmaster.
Okay.
Richard's been dealing with him directly.
In other words, the cleanout process is almost impossible because of the way DEQ has mandated it to be done and not to be done. So, yeah.
That's correct.
This man has been readily available 24/7. We call him and he comes down with Alan Avery right now every time.
Yeah, it's we ran afoul of DEQ on this very location, this 36-inch culvert. We were mapping out there because we didn't know where these pipes were going. We were running our jet rodder down these lines to see where it popped up at another catch basin or manhole, we're mapping everything, and we spent over $64,000 on this project right now with mapping, fixing drains and things, and engineering. We've hired Dyer Partnership on this very drain to check the capacity issues. But the thing is that this port falls under several jurisdictions with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Department of State Lands, DEQ, ODFW, and they all have their rules. And there's, I believe it's a 401 permitting process. It's a very in-depth process that you have to get. And if there's like a drop of dirt that gets into that port while we're working, it's a Class 1 violation, because that's what we're dealing with right now. And so it's, I tried to explain to DEQ, we'll get 99.9% of material out of that pipe and in a truck and into a landfill. But no, if one drop of dirt gets in there, you're killing baby cohos. It's really harsh line. And, but anyways, so that's what we're kind of dealing with. And I was trying to get it together this fall. Then the rains came early, and we can't deal with the water flows coming down that creek that goes into this basin through this 36-inch pipe. And with the 401 permitting, there was no way I could get it done this fall. So it's kind of taken a backseat to like maybe next fall to try to clean this pipe, because if we do anything with it right now, I mean, if we loosen up a rock and it rolls out that end of the pipe and DEQ's there, Class 1 violation.
Commissioner Gold?
So question, would DEQ rather have a whole lot of sediment coming out because of overflow of water rather than working on it to get cleaned up properly?
Mr. Davis, if you would pull that mic a little closer to you. Thank you.
We've been told by DEQ, and maybe Gary could explain it better, but we have a time frame, and we're going to start getting extremely stiff penalties charged to our port. Am I right, Gary, in saying that? I don't think I could, like.
Well, we have industrial water.
The mic, Gary.
We have industrial stormwater issues that it's separate from this. It is separate. Jarvis, want to say something? Not yet. Okay. There's multiple issues with DEQ. But we have a 1200Z permit that we have to deal with our own stormwater pollution plan. And then this issue here doesn't fall under the 1200Z permit, but it falls under the Clean Water Act. So I mean, there's multiple issues going on with DEQ, and I think DEQ wanted to put some silt at the end of it to catch that material, but then once it hits the water, then we're dredging it. I think Travis may want to step in now.
Hi, thank you. DEQ is going to want a complete plan that's going to need to be approved by the county, from the county first before anything's going to happen. DEQ is not going to let, even a silt screen is not going to cover what we're trying to do. They want the material pulled back away from the water. Divert the water, pull the material back through the culvert out that way. They're not going to want anything going into the water.
So what kind of equipment is that going to take to pull it the other way?
There is multiple different ways you can send people in to clean it out. Gary actually has been a part of multiple culvert cleaning projects in California. But the whole problem, I guess, that I think that we're trying to get to, I think you guys have a lot of the background of the material, is that we want to get it clean just as bad as you do. But the problem is that we've been told anything on our side of Lower Harbor Road, the culvert is ours, and the material in it that we're responsible to get rid of. The county has a very small section, the roadway, to get out. We have 400, 500 feet of this pipe to clean out. The port right now feels that the material that's in the pipe is coming from Harbor Hills, everything above us, and now we're being told we're responsible for cleaning it out. So that I think is what we're actually here for, as far as this issue is who's going to be responsible for the actual cost of cleaning this out, because these multiple culverts lines that we have, the port has, in this parking lot, has 2 drains that come from the parking lot that run into this culvert, and it's a paved parking lot. So the size of rocks, everything that are in it, the sediment that's in it, is coming from across Lower Harbor Road. And that's where really where we're at right now, is how are we going to, the port can't afford tens of thousands of dollars to clean this pipe out right now, and I know it's an issue to get it cleaned out, but the material isn't ours.
Well, this is the time that we all join together and become one team and get this handled. I mean, this is something that's required. It's going to make everything better for everyone concerned in the county. So this is one of those times that we get together and work together as a group, and let's get this thing figured out. Mr. Davis?
Question with the roadmaster. These culverts are not up to capacity. You just said that yourself.
Some of them are. This particular one, I hired the county, okay, sorry.
They're not up to capacity, and they're old and they're wore out. So I've been looking at several of them, the bottoms wore out. We're creating sinkholes as we speak, slowly but surely. And would it not be beneficial and economically feasible to just somehow put new culverts in, new sizes that are of capacity, and do it right for a change, like you said earlier, not no willy-nilly and everybody thinks everything's okay and it's really horribly bad?
That's absolutely true, and you're absolutely right. And I've already, this year we hired Dyer Partnership to be our contract engineer. And this particular pipe, I had them survey it, size it for capacity, do the drainage of the hills. It's totally sized appropriately. It definitely has the right elevations and fall. But the thing is, it's full of material. There might be a big hole in that pipe with some hole in it. There might be an offset joint or a rotten invert where rocks aren't able to work their way out. And so until it's clean, you won't know if there's any deficiencies or not. But right now, for what we can see, the only deficiency is this full of rock. And it is sized appropriately, I believe, for a 50-year rain event. And I paid Dyer Partnership to take care of that. I don't have the report yet, but on the phone they told me a few weeks ago that it is sized appropriately in what I just told you. And that's what you need to do on all these pipes and all these drainages, and then come up with a plan where we can work together and chase funding, because these do cost thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, even $1 million, depending on what you do. And so just to clean the pipes in the port, I got a cost estimate for the county road to clean its culverts and the port to clean about $25,000 each if we're cleaning them with the standard method. Now, the way DEQ wants us to clean them, it's probably going to cost $1 million, you know what I'm saying? Because they want us to go backwards, upside down, and not a drop gets into the port, which is totally unrealistic. And so, we're working on that. We're going to try to get a plan together. And I think the big thing, though, is where all this money is going to come from. Because if we could get it into a standard cleaning operation where it would be about $25,000 for the port and $25,000 for the county, where's the money going to come from, and how we're going to work together.
Ms. Schmelzer, you had a question?
Just a couple of them. Does the port or the county in that area have to worry about TMDLs, the total maximum daily loads? Because to me, this is actually exceeding it, and I would think that would open us up for funding based on that program.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know either.
Okay, and then I have another question. I'm not familiar with Harbor Hills, but is that a recent subdivision?
No, it's a very old subdivision.
Very old. Okay.
Yeah, Harbor Hills is all the houses on this side, on the harbor side of the bridge.
Okay.
That are up on those mountains, and there actually is, Richard, is that, what was that man's name?
Westbrook?
Westbrook subdivision is up there as part of Harbor Hills.
Okay, because if it was newer, I was going to say we need to look at the developer, because, when you develop a plat, you're also supposed to be looking at the stormwater and where is that make sure it's not affecting other properties. But it sounds like those are relatively old developments.
Yeah, that was called HW3, Harbor.
Okay.
Yeah, HW, Hank Westbrook 3, something like that. But anyway, that subdivision is not even complete today because of drainage and sewage and power and all that. It's very sparsely developed.
Okay. And so another question I have too is, so in the state of Oregon, it's my understanding that DEQ is the one who requires the best management practices during construction. They require the silt fences, they have all the guidelines and everything. And if they had been monitoring that, we wouldn't have all of this coming down into these culverts. So is that have we talked to DEQ about that perhaps as a negotiation tool? Like, hey, you were not installing BMPs, you were not requiring BMPs on this construction like the law says, so can you now help us, work with us, I guess, on cleaning these culverts out?
No, we haven't.
That's a very good point.
Is that a good approach to take, though?
Very good.
I don't know.
I don't know, you know, if you can go back and talk about silt fencing on projects
50
from
years.
30 years ago type thing. And you know, what we have here is just historic drainage issues that have been going on for years. That just haven't been addressed, haven't been maintained, and the pipes are getting older, they're getting rotten, and like some of them have the whole bottom. What happens on these old metal pipes, like rocks tumble across the bottom, they wear out the galvanized. Next thing you know, that we have acidic soil, they eat the bottoms of the pipes out. Now it's just dirt down there, and things don't flow efficiently. And
I've got that.
yeah, then there's also is where people are just putting pipes in, they just put in what they had, whether it was an old pipe or an undersized pipe or an oversized pipe. That's what they had, they threw it in the whole ground. And, you know, some of the issues might be that would help. Maybe there's a couple of these drainages that could be opened up through the port property where they could be turned back into creeks. You know, those kinds of things could be, if we could look at that, you know, DEQ and DSL, because some of these creeks have fish. And like Double Creek has fish, and there's one even called Fish Creek. And so there's different ways of skinning this cat if we could come up with solutions and put them in a facility plan. And I think there's funding out there to make these things happen.
So, Mr. Davis, what can we do for you?
Is this a countywide problem? Is this not just in the port? Is this drainage problem with these culverts? It seems to me like this would be a countywide problem in other areas. Is it?
I haven't seen any here or heard of any in Port Orford. I mean, our drainage problem here is basically the Rogue River. I was told by a couple of pretty smart people this summer that the Rogue River has a cork in the end of it that cannot be moved right now. So we've been in Washington talking to Senate and Congress trying to get that cleared out and have made no headway. So, you know, on a larger scale, our rivers, and I've heard from Commissioner Gold, the same as, you know, down in Brookings, the Chetco, is basically the gravel in the end of that right now is overwhelming. So it looks like it's a you know, a problem that we're having throughout the entire county on a larger scale, and this is ancillary to that, I'm guessing.
I think it's, if I could, I think it's manifest in the Port of Brookings Harbor because the county doesn't have a large unincorporated area that's developed like Harbor and Harbor Hills. There's very dense residential development there, unlike any other place in the county situated next to a port. I mean, Gold Beach, you got the city, Wedderburn, but it's nowhere near populated as Harbor. And Port Orford, you got the city, and there's not a lot of unincorporated. So I think it's from, as they talked about, the old dense residential development up in the hills above the Port of Brookings Harbor. And Commissioner Boyce, I think, yes, the fire, you know, and the cause and effect of the silt, what we're talking about here is, I think it's really a much smaller scope view of the Port of Brookings Harbor issue related primarily to the identified storm drain system that kind of works its way up the one hill up into those developments. That's kind of what I've been following there.
It's like two things.
Okay.
Really.
Yeah,
Because that's one that Mr. Huddle just said, is these little creeks that come right into drainage coming into the port. But then that's what these little piles are all in the port. But then there's the overall arching issue with the 40,000 tons. When the Chetco goes in the flood and it's running mud for 3 weeks, all that mud settles out into the port, and that's the 40,000 tons. So we've got two issues going on here.
Absolutely.
But I think from the roadmaster's point of view, from the roads department point of view, it's the culverting part of the equation. And then from the county's point of view, and Julie Schmelzer, you talked about land development subdividers need to have their, you know, drainage in place and meeting standards and stuff. I think what we've heard is these are older developments, some of them aren't even complete. I think they kind of pre-existed some of the current code and some of the current knowledge on those kind of things, and that's what we're I think what we're faced with is a current solution to a pre-existing older situation. And again, and what you're proposing, Rich, is to somehow partner with the port to put our heads together to figure out how to fix these culverting parts right here and these storm drain parts right here. Is that
Absolutely.
Okay.
And moving forward with DEQ to figure out what they're going to require us to do.
Yeah, we're going to be working strongly with DEQ, DSL, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and ODFW, and we have really strict guidelines that we have to follow, and we're not going to go into this project or any part of cleaning or repairing or replacing anything or upgrading until we have our BMPs down solid. We have a really solid plan that we're going to win without getting fined. These DEQ's fines are nothing to mess with.
I think we need some more government to help us to regulate some more of this stuff.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I could sense just a little bit of frustration. You mentioned, Commissioner Davis, you mentioned the Department of Environmental Quality. I want the public to know that's listening now what you're up against, what we're up against. And it sure takes the fun out of serving on a port, and even to the extent of us sitting here. I'm going to bring up just a bit of a effort made just 2 days ago with BC Fisheries. They are making a tremendous effort to follow through with their plans with the DEQ. So we had the one DEQ rep on the phone and with management. And one thing I learned, not to reveal anything I shouldn't, but one thing I did learn is that processing plants on the Oregon coast are all dealing with the same thing. And how it relates to this project, in my view, and it's not just the Chetco Bar, but the sediment, the aggregate, the sheer amount of rock that we're getting coming down the road is coming from the Chetco Bar and the Klondike via the Illinois River. Basically, a beautiful, pristine twin to the Chetco. So I mentioned a minute ago, we're trying to figure out if we could make that proof for that amount of damage. And so where we sit around the state, bad enough that we lost our forest, we've lost a good part of the Brookings Harbor watershed. I have a tremendous long-term concern for that. 80% of it was burned. Most of it moderate to severe, as you all know. And so that's the long-term concern. The short-term concern is we are the ones that have to deal with that fire wasn't put out early on. And it's already kind of been swept under the rug. We had a GAO visit here, and thanks to Senator Wyden and Congressman DeFazio, they followed through with that. But now we're not hearing what that report is.
That's going to be out in October, from what I hear.
Thank you.
Sometime.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. So we're left in the short term to deal with this mess, and it is beyond a giant headache. I don't want to sound horribly pessimistic, but when it comes to the DEQ, Mr. Chair, and the Port Commission here, they threatened to fine us for $9,000. We basically, because our roadmaster and the road department basically did everything they should have done and on time. It was just the victim of just general circumstances. You mentioned that it's unrealistic. It doesn't matter to them. So at some point, I think we just have to say, okay, we're elected public officials. We understand our responsibility. This is wrong. We're going to stop trying to bend over backwards because you won't help us. Meanwhile, look at what we're dealing with. And so if it doesn't come from the governor's office, if it doesn't come, then we're going to have to just get a group of people out here with signs and saying, this is what the Department of Environmental Quality is doing to our program. And if that sounds drastic, I don't know what else is left, because we sure as heck don't have the money and the staff to deal with this all. We'll do everything we can, and I respect and appreciate and think it's good counsel to come up with a plan. The sooner the better, but in the meantime, here's where we are. And so, I might be in our own jail here, but it's getting to be that serious, and it's not just Curry County, not just the Port of Brookings Harbor, it's all down the Oregon coast. We need them to come to the table and help us solve the problem. Thank you. That's too long, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Moser?
Yes, we recently saw some grant announcements from USDA for areas affected by disasters.
And that's where I was going, thank you. I don't care if it's
Affected by
30 years or
disasters.
30 days.
And I think this might be a really good project for that we should probably follow up on and see if we can get funding for it. I'm not sure if we're far enough along, but I would think we have enough documentation, especially with these photos and some of the numbers you have, that we could take a shot at that. But I also would like to know, I know Jeremy Dumeier, our Emergency Management Director, is here, and I'd like to hear from him whether he thinks there is any possibility to get hazard mitigation funding because a good portion of this was a result of a forest fire or wildland fire.
And subsequent flooding.
I'm Jeremy Dumeier, Curry County Emergency Management. So far, the port has applied for under 2 presidential disaster declarations for some hazard mitigation funding. They're not related to the stormwater issue. They're related to basically the silting in of the port from the February and April storms. That being said, yes, there is HMGP funding available. I actually just sent Gary a link on that. That funding will come out here. I actually go to Grants Pass in 2 weeks to learn more about this year's round of grant funding for that. I have invited Gary through that email to attend if he is able to. So yes, that grant funding is available through HMGP. As far as the $150 million USDA loans and grants program, I would also think that this would apply. However, Curry County does not yet have a designation as to how much we are eligible for of the total. My understanding in talking with Deanna Quimby at the USDA is that we will get approximately $300,000 to $400,000 in eligible program disbursements, but we have several programs that we're looking at already in Curry County, so it'll be a matter of prioritizing what the needs are for those funds.
Thank you.
Mr. Dumeier? Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may. We have to compete for that money with other counties, correct?
The $300,000 to $400,000 I referenced would be Curry County's overall available funds. The HMGP that I mentioned and invite Gary to, that is a competition. It's a $3 to $3.5 million pot for the state of Oregon. Historically, 110 entities have applied for that, roughly a third of which are successful.
Commissioner Gold?
So would you say our chances of getting some grant money would be?
Absolutely. I was actually looking at the most recent Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, which is 2016. We are currently in the update of that plan, and the port is a part of that. And it actually identifies stormwater systems in that hazard mitigation plan. So by working together, yes, we would be better positioned to go after those funds.
Commissioner Boyce?
That's all I have for now. Thank you. I did, thanks.
All right. Yes, sir.
I have one.
Into the mic.
When we go for all these grants and monies for projects, whether it be the county, the state, or the port, we have to pay for so many studies before actual groundbreaking gets on. And that's the frustration with me with DEQ, is the impossibility of making it so difficult. It wants to drag stuff backwards in a culvert uphill, as our roadmaster was talking. That's just like, I mean, and I do agree with court that we need to take not an aggressive stand, but a stand and say, hey, will you work with us? Will you work with the county and the port somehow? Because these studies, I've seen it for 30 years, just eat up project money left and right, and the project never gets done.
I agree.
This is something we have to deal with. So.
Correct. And that's just one of the frustrations in my mind.
I'm saying the county and the port have to deal with.
Correct. And I'm very excited about
we need
partnership
to get a
with this
partnership
county.
established and move forward with that. So.
Not only in the culvert situation are we excited about a partnership with the county, but in other discussed recent items.
You asked what we could do.
Yes, sir.
I think we've heard a pretty good roadmap to develop a plan, and kind of get our act together, and we've identified the problem. How might we address that? But I don't think we're going to get very far with this without some legislative interest. I think legislative nudge to DEQ might help with this issue. I'm extremely frustrated about the estuary and Gold Beach. We're eliminating fish habitat on the excuse of helping fish, which I just don't understand. So that's a discussion as well that we're going to have with not only DEQ but the Corps of Engineers about what do we do to mitigate all this gravel. I mean, these two rivers move a huge amount of gravel.
That's actually going to happen in a few weeks.
Is it? Okay. But anyway, if we can get the planning done, get this identified, and get a little push on the legislative side to say, you know, we cannot continue to put roadblocks in front of these people who are trying to fix the problem. If we have to clean that culvert out and put mud in the water, okay. We'll put up silt fences, we'll do what we'll have to do, but we have to have a practical solution to this, or this never changes. I mean, and I think, at least from my experience in another state with state government, it's going to take that kind of push to get those people to do something to help us.
If both commissions would be okay with it, I'd be willing to organize a meeting with staff, Rich, Jeremy, Gary, and sit down with the Governor's Regional Solutions team, Alex Campbell from that, explain to him the problems, and let him know that we need support, we need the funding, and he can work with, so what they do is on that Regional Solutions team, they have a representative from DEQ, and we can talk to them and explain the situation and see how they can help us navigate that process. They also have somebody from ODOT on there, somebody from Business Oregon, but we'll sit down with that group and say, look, we're trying to do it, but you're making it impossible for us. So if the commissioners are okay with that, I'd be willing to.
It's good.
I'm good.
Set that up.
I'd like
Very good.
Mr. Boyce?
I'd like to be involved in that. And actually, Senator Hurd and Representative Brock Smith, if they could have been here today, would be, but they're going to be here from now on. I'll make sure. It's very important, and that's in that connection with the governor's office. I just made a note on Alex Campbell. That's a very good place to start too. Should have done it before now, but thank you.
Yeah, because I will say Alex came down when we had the scientists here on the road. Alex actually came down to be on that as well, so he does have an interest in this. He's got a proven interest because he's been there, so it's good to know. Commissioner Boyce?
Also, I've been pushing as hard as I can for a grant writer, and we just haven't landed right side up on that yet. But I assume the port does not have a individual grant writer that you're able to use. Or do you do that within your system? I know the road department has a part-time assistant, but that's part of our long-term goal, is to have somebody that comes on board. And it's really too bad we didn't get this done initially, because now after the 9-county declaration that we all qualified for, we could have been in a little better position to move forward quickly. So I'm sorry, but we're playing catch up a little bit. So do you have a grant writer for the port?
The port uses our engineer for helping us out doing the grant writer. So it's between port staff and an engineer, that's what we're doing. But we would love to have a grant writer that's like an official grant writer.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. We represented well, but we could all find improvement. Yes.
Yep.
So the road department's moving fast towards this project and other projects in the county by hiring Dyer Partnership as our contract engineer, by hiring past Public Works Director Laura Lee Snook be our grants writer. And so we're trying to put these things together as we speak, and I'm going to be reaching out to you for a task order approval to update the Harbor Hills in the port area, not the port, but the port area stormwater facility plan. And I suggest that maybe the port may want to partner in on that and get a quote from Dyer Partnership as well for their things of inside the port that they're concerned about, and have a complete master plan to help us pursue funding, because these grants are highly competitive, and if you have an engineered plan, it raises your grant score. Anything you can do to raise your grant score up is going to help you get funding, but you also have to be prepared if it's $1 million project you gotta have $100,000 probably for matching funds, or something that you could exchange for as a match. So, but I think if we work together, we can make things happen.
I'm all for doing that expeditiously.
Okay, I'm on it.
Thank you.
What else can we talk about?
I thought the next thing was economic development.
Absolutely. Okay, you want me to mention it first?
Go ahead. I do have one thing. I'm sorry that I'm not sure if I'm missing it, so I'm just going to ask. So the material that's in the culvert, and I know it's necking down back to what I feel the issue that we're here to discuss with the board. From talking to Richard, the material that is in the culvert on our side of Lower Harbor Road, we've been told is our responsibility. We feel it's not our responsibility. So, and with talking to Richard, I feel that between the two boards, do you guys, I guess my question is, do you guys feel that the material in the culvert that has been coming from Harbor Hills is our responsibility to remove?
Well, I think it's been stated at this meeting that we'd like to work together to remove that. So let's not try and assess, in my opinion, whose it is, whose problem it is, whatever. We'll work together as a team to get this done.
Okay, thank you.
I just think it might open a pot up that we don't need to get open. Let's not try and lay blame. Let's try and find a fix.
It's not lay blame, it's
but
just
responsibility.
assume that it's a 50-50 problem that we're going to work through.
Absolutely. That's what my hope is, and I hope this board is in agreement and your board is in agreement that it is a 50-50 partnership that we're going to work through this.
And other projects.
Yes, and other projects, yes.
I just want to say, you clean the culverts out. You still haven't taken care of the source of the problem.
Right.
And so you need to come up with some sort of solution that's going to be long-term. So.
And I think that with Richard, we have talked about that. We need, this long-term solution of it is getting more sediment catch basins put in, rather they be on port property or somewhere else. The port is more interested in granting easements so we can get these things installed to help catch this material before it fills up the pipes and hits the basins.
One moment, Council. You had your hand.
Well, I believe that the way I look at it is with the aging infrastructure, that I'm sure a lot of those stormwater culverts and whatever have deteriorated in so many places, and until, we can come up with a solution to fix that, we're always going to have these rocks and sediment and stuff ending up down there.
Council?
The question I had is, what's the geographic area of the Port District as the entity? Not so much just the port where the operations are, but what is the geographic area of, I guess, your taxing base? How big is the Port District itself? Like
California border to Crystal River.
Okay, so there's a lot of people in the Port District. Okay, good. Good. That's just a question I had, because ultimately, what I've seen is that you come up with a plan for capital improvements, and then you figure out how you're going to chop that up into little tiny bits that everyone can contribute to it. So when you say Port County, we're talking about citizens, really, and so then it's just a matter of getting a fair formula to attribute and spread the costs around.
I can think of several ways that we might be able to look at that as well.
But that's what the engineering firms are good at. But anyhow, so there's just a lot of ways to do it. But it's just and so your basically people are our people. Our citizens are in the Port District, and so when we talk about is it a Port District problem or a county problem, it's the people in the area who get the benefit of the port and the county who are ultimately going to.
2/3 of the county lives in the Port District.
Nope. Again, so there are a lot of resources to draw from to solve this.
Mr. Davis?
Could we talk about corporate money?
Come on in. You got some?
I'm going to rely on Chair Chris.
Well, I'm just there's some things that I'm looking at doing in the county. One is our fairgrounds, and the other is the port in South County. I've said since well before I ran for office that it's a gem. I mean, those are things that are money makers. I mean, they are literal cash cows in this county. And I am right now beginning a search for corporate money to look at maybe sponsoring our fairgrounds, sponsoring the Port of Harbor, hanging a big sign over your porch that says sponsored by Ford, or having some kind of sponsorship through them. There are hundreds of millions of dollars that are out there in corporate money that want their name, and I'm sure something like Apple wouldn't want their name on the Port of Brookings Harbor, but maybe Caterpillar would, maybe John Deere would, because we're a rural farming community. We're, maybe some mill that makes chainsaws, Husqvarna, or one of those companies might want to be a partner sponsor, and maybe not one large sponsor, but maybe 10 small. So that's what I'm going to devote the next few months of some of my time to, is looking for corporate money to come into rural Oregon in Curry County and spend a little of their money here that these people spend our money in their stores, and ask them to partner with us. There's a lot of that out there that it's really, I think a lot of people are just afraid to ask for it. And they write it off every year at the end of every year. Rather than let's all get new corporate cars this year, let's donate $1 million to Curry County in something. I don't know. But these are things that I'm going to look to pursue. I've spoken with Ms. Schmelzer about it, and actually Summer Mattson as well. And we're going to start to look at going after some corporate money for some corporate sponsorships.
That's awesome. That's exciting. But that's outside the box.
I've always lived outside
Correct.
the box. I had to knock to get in.
Right. But you're right. There's a lot of money out there, and if you don't go ask for it, you'll never get it.
If you look at every major sporting complex in the nation, they're all sponsored by somebody. Most Little League baseball fields are sponsored by somebody. That's the full circle of it. A Little League baseball field is usually sponsored by Joe's Grill, and he pays for the grass mowing and the blah, blah, blah. And basketball and football teams are all sponsored by somebody. So that corporate money's out there. It's easy. I think you just got to keep knocking on doors and ringing the phone, and you'll find some people that'll give it. Yes, sir.
With that in mind, I would remind us all that the Port of Brookings Harbor, from a recreational standpoint, is the third most heavily utilized port in Oregon. I would look to Yamaha, Honda, Kickofer Marine, who make Mercury outboards. I mean, we sell a lot of boats for them just by having that facility.
And that's what I'm going to look to do, is wherever we're looking, we're going to look for sponsors that do that kind of business there. I think I've spoken with several people about, I'd love to see a great big Ferris wheel down there in the port that you can see from the road. We've got to give people in this county a reason to park their car and stop in our county,
Right.
spend their money. What is going to make you pull off the road? And that's how we have to look from an economic development standpoint. We have to look at, because no one, we can't be Santa Monica. We don't have room for another 100,000 homes in this county, so we've got to find a way to pay the bills. So one of those ways is to get somebody to pull off the road and spend a day in Curry County.
Right.
What are those things? And that's the mindset that we have to have. What will make somebody pull off the road and say, I want to spend the day in Curry County? A big Ferris wheel? That's what made Santa Monica, when it was almost bankrupt. Look where they are now. I talked to you about maybe a gondola type of a cable system down there that I've already spoken to a company in the Netherlands about. They're willing to partner with some of that, but they want corporate money for it. To go down over the port and come back up over the highway into that hill on the backside, to have that view for a day ride, bring your whole family for $25, you rent a gondola car for the next 2 hours. Those are reasons to make people stop. And while they're here, they're going to eat in a restaurant. They're going to fill their car up with gas. They're going to shop in our stores. That's how we build economic development.
A gondola, they put it in the Trees and Mysteries, and it doubled their business.
Yeah. These are the kind of things that you've got to, we've got to, this board, along with Ms. Schmelzer, Summer, these are the things that we're looking at to help build this county and put it back in the black and get it back up on its wheels. And that's how we're going to pay the bills, because we don't have the timber anymore. There's so many things we've lost, we can't even get pilt now.
And we may be losing some fishing money too.
Yeah,
and that's really scary. And we're
because
talking
of
a lot
the
of
whales, yeah.
Millions. California's already losing it.
So on the Ferris wheel, I just have to add that Commissioner Pash.
You're not going to shoot that out of the saddle.
I'm not shooting that out of the saddle. It was actually Gary and his staff and Commissioner Pash and I can't remember, Summer was there, but we all sat down one day and we talked about just thinking outside the box. And Commissioner Pash actually went back and researched what it would cost for the Ferris wheel, how much you would charge a ticket, and how much money you could make. And he deducted insurance from it and accounted for different seasons, and it did look pretty lucrative. So I do want to share with you, though, something that I was talking with our Parks Director about, and that was about the campground down at the port. I don't know if you're interested in partnering with the county on that, but when we met a couple months ago with Gary, we couldn't help at that point. But the Parks Director did a little research, and he got back to me yesterday. He's aware of a way we can get around that, so to speak, and that is because there is an entrance and an exit to that campground area. We would be eligible for the county to actually lease the property, and then the county would run the maintenance and oversee the operations of the facilities. The county retains all state license fee increase and the 20% of net revenue, and then the port would get 80% of net revenue. So and with that money that he's also eligible to do through that program, we can rebuild the bathrooms, and I talked to him about benches, things of that nature. He said yes. He said we might even be able to get the money to have removable steel pilings in the parking lot, walkway to prevent log damage as another thing. So that's all something, if the commission would be interested, something to think about. I mean, we don't want to own it. We just want to help you. We, of course, would make some money off of it, but you'd be making 80% off of it. Our board has not discussed that yet. Like I said, we just got this information yesterday. But if it's something you'd be interested in, we'd be willing to have our Parks Department go down and do a presentation to you and get those balls rolling. I mean, like I said, if we can get that bathroom paid for out of these park monies and some pilings, et cetera, that's less money the port has to spend on that they can then spend on other infrastructure.
The only thing I think the port would be responsible for that is the insurance. We would want the port to keep its, the liability insurance on the park. Commissioner Gold?
One thing I know, when I was commissioner down there, the electricity down in the RV park was sorely lacking. And I would talk to Josh about upgrades in the electric situation down there.
You have a board that thinks out of the box right now.
Is that something you'd be interested in meeting with staff on and pursuing?
Personally, I would be greatly interested in it.
I think so.
Greatly.
I'm interested. Okay.
It would eliminate a lot of stuff that we have going on right now. It's going to cost us a lot of money that we don't have. It's going to take us a very long time to obtain. And this partnership in this, like you were talking about, there again, we would have more pull and more power to obtain funds as that partnership.
Right.
Even though it's an 80-20 deal, we would still be a partnership in reaching out to try and find funds. Correct?
Right.
So therefore, that would be easier.
Correct.
And then, Julie, what time of a lease are you considering? Has that been mentioned?
Because we just got this yesterday, we haven't talked about it. The board hasn't talked about it.
It's 25 years. That's what I suggested.
Well, I know when we're looking at Social Security bar, we're looking at a 50-year lease down there. So I think it really depends what type of infrastructure and what it costs the county. If the county doesn't have much of an investment in it, we can go with a shorter lease, like 20 years, 25 years. If we're actually taking county funds and actually putting the infrastructure in, of course, then we look at longer-term leases because we have an investment in it. With this, if we can get the grant funding and, county staff helps with it and there's not much of an investment, we can look at a shorter-term lease. But what I will do is I will work with Gary and we'll set up a meeting to come down and talk to your commission about the options and what would be involved with that.
So one of the discussion points could be, and when the county puts in money for upgrades or whatever the county would use their own personal monies for development or upgrades, would that come off of the gross income?
No.
Would your investment come off the gross income?
I would have to ask Josh how he figured it out.
That's one thing that would be needed to discuss though, right?
Right, but the way the state RV system is set up and the campground system is set up, we usually don't have to do a lot of investment in it, of our own investment.
Good.
Because you're getting RV fees to create RV spaces, and so the state helps give money to create those spaces, so we can offer more recreation. But I'll have Josh, like I said, I'll work with Gary and we'll have him come down and talk with you about that.
I would personally, and I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I think we're getting a lot of shaking the head of yes.
I've seen everyone shake their head yes.
Because I've learned one thing from David Dillinger. We were not in the RV business. We're not in the ice cream business. We're not in the laundromat business. When we got rid of the cold storage and the ice plant, how much money did we start making a month just by getting rid of those two? $9,000 a month and $17,000?
Well, the leases themselves are $2,000 a month, but we didn't have to spend any money.
But we did all the maintenance and all that.
Right.
It was like $17,000 in our pocket per month just to get rid of two businesses that we didn't have any business being in business in, or landlord, at least land. So if somebody wanted to lease the land, which would be the RV part, I would be greatly interested in that.
Okay. Gary?
Yep. We actually have a special meeting next Thursday. I don't know if that's too soon, but our special meeting is talking about our RV park. If that's possible to...
Sure. Do you know offhand, Gary, what time that meeting is?
It's 10 a.m. At our meeting room at the port. On the 24th, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, next Thursday, 24th.
I will see if he's...
10 a.m.
I'll see if he's available.
Okay.
All right.
So I know there's some other things we wanted to talk about, economic development. I don't know if the port had something else, but we just wanted to share some ideas with you and some things that we've thought about at the county. One day Sue and I know, sat there with some crazy ideas. Chris and I sat there with crazy ideas. We actually found some wonderful sculptures and art that was pretty cheap, but I know that you've put together like an art council that helps out with the port, is that correct?
Yes.
So if possible, we'd like to have our staff join your group to share with some ideas, and they're very familiar with the resources that might be available and different ideas and trends with ports, things of that nature that we'd like to help you with. Like I said, we've got lots of crazy ideas we'd like to throw at you and see what sticks and see what we can help with.
When would you like to have the meeting?
Do you want to do it the 24th? Well, I guess you tell me when your arch group meets.
That works.
Okay. So I'll see if staff is available for that one on that. And then, just so you know too, that we do have, the county does have promotions. We did have it a number of years ago. We stopped for about 4 years, but we're back into the promotions business where we do have the Facebook, the social media. We have staff that can make films, promotional films that can be used to draw in more tourists. So I do want you to keep that in mind when it comes to marketing what you have at the port and making sure people are aware of that. We do have those resources. We don't charge for those. We do them as part of our tours and promotions. So that's something to keep in mind with too. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk to you real quick about was the signs, the signage. I noticed when I was at the RV park this past weekend or the weekend before, the signs that you have, the informational signage, I see they're faded. And I just wanted to let you know that DEQ does have money for people to replace those educational signs. Whenever someone pays a fine to DEQ, the money goes into a pot, and that's one of the things that they then give money for with those funds. So since the county might be paying a fine down there, maybe we could recoup that.
We're not paying no stinking fine.
Maybe we could get that money for a sign. And when economic development and tourism comes down to talk with you or meet with your art group, I will have them bring that information along as well, okay? And Ken, are you the contact on that then?
Yes.
Okay. What's your last name, Ken?
Range, R-A-N-G-E.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Art on the Boardwalk Abandoned?
Yes, absolutely.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Great. Abandoned port is primo.
We've already got the PBAA, the port's behind it. The PBAA is going to be the curator for the whole event.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Good.
And
our community is very much behind you.
Good.
That's great.
All right.
That is good to hear, yeah.
All righty. Anything else?
What about TLT funds?
So with the transit lodging tax at the current time, the way the ordinance is written, there's so much that goes back to the county for admin and services, and some goes for promotions. This particular year, the funds, a good share of the funds are going towards the event center. But we do have a promotions committee that is going to be meeting in November. Part of the ordinance with that tax, with that ordinance required there to be a promotions committee. So that promotions committee is going to start meeting in November, and they will discuss how they feel the tax dollars should be spent. Now, I will say this, the people that are paying into that tax right now are the hoteliers, the Airbnbs, et cetera, that are in the unincorporated areas of the county. I'm guessing, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing they'd want to see more of the promotions money spent in the unincorporated areas, would be my guess, but I'm not on that committee. But that's something I think they could definitely talk about, is what can they do to help the poor.
And that's why everyone needs to be involved in these kind of committees. We need to have people from different areas in this county involved in these committees so that they have a voice in what happens with that money.
I think it's important that you understand where the money's going, this TLT. 70% goes towards tourism, and we've already earmarked 50% of that 70%, in other words, 35%, to go to the fair. That other 35% will be up for grabs, and I would like to see the port start grabbing a little of that.
We do have one of the members on that promotions committee does have a business down at the port. So there is going to be representation from that area on that committee.
I don't have anything further. Do you have anything further?
No, sorry.
All right. So
Thanks for making the trip north.
We're going to adjourn the workshop, take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll re-enter back into executive session. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Wednesday, October 16th at 4:43 p.m. Your government hard at work here. All right, so next on the agenda, coming out of executive session, the board and staff is to proceed as directed from executive session. And next on our agenda is number 12, hire orders. A, approve irregular building inspector 2.
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
So B has been removed from the, from 12. So next we have any other, 13? Nothing? With
What
nothing,
about Rich's thing, or did we already do that?
We did that
Okay. Just wanted to,
after discussion.
okay, I wanted to make sure that was done.
with nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.